Airline Pilot Guy, episode 197.
Flight 209er, you are cleared for takeoff.
Roger.
LA departure 123.9er.
Roger. Being less connected.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show, a view from my side of the cockpit door. I'm Captain Jeff, your host, broadcasting live from Studio 1A in the APG headquarters building in Roswell, Georgia. In this episode, China adopts English language-only policy for air traffic control, a rugby team's ultimate show of selflessness, final report on AirAsia 8501, a pilot arrested for drug smuggling attempt, and finally a flight attendant goes, "Cray cray!" So get all settled in, tray tables and seat backs in their upright and locked positions, electronic devices powered on. Flight 197 is ready for pushback. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. If this is your first time listening or watching, hi, I'm Captain Jeff Nielsen, an airline pilot, and I'm a guy, and that's why we call it the Airline Pilot Guy. But it's not just me. I have a couple of guests that come to help me answer questions and provide entertainment. And the first I'll mention is Dr. Steph. She is a physician and a commercial-rated pilot, and she's located near the beautiful Queen City of Charlotte, North Carolina. Hello, Steph.
Hello, hello. Good to be back again. Good to see you all. Hope you had a great... Wait, when was the last time we met? Was it before Thanksgiving? Can't even remember.
No, I don't remember.
Why can't I think?
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah, okay.
So I hope you all had a great Thanksgiving.
I know I did. And we also have Miami Rick. His name is Rick, and he's in Miami. And that's why we call him Miami Rick. And he is a freight dog pilot, a 777 driver for a major multinational airline. Hello.
Hey, everybody. Miami Rick here. And yes, my name is Rick, and I'm from Miami. So, I guess that's why they call me Miami Rick.
There's a lot of logic going on here. I like
Very
it.
logical show.
We're
so
pilots.
far.
We're
Steph,
logical.
Miami Rick. It all makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
When you think about
I
it.
hope everybody got a good turkey day as well. I didn't had a turkey club for dinner. That was, I guess
Oh,
turkey involved. No, I'm just kidding. I did.
That's kinda
I had a good
sad.
turkey dinner. Yes, sad situation.
that is sad. So no, you were at home with your family, weren't you?
Yeah. I was
Okay.
home with the family. That was actually requested the day off for that. So we had a nice little. It was just the three of us, but we had a nice little turkey dinner. It's nice to have dinner with the family every once in a while.
Okay, good.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, I was home with family as well. And Dr. Steph, you were up in Nashville.
I was up in Nashville, and Justice and I went out to dinner, which I had never done before, but apparently Justice did a whole bunch growing up. But I've never been out for dinner on Thanksgiving before. And we went out to the Grove Park Inn with another couple, and it was a really nice dinner. It was very, very crowded. But, we had reservations, so no problem there, and got to see an awesome sunset. And yeah, really nice.
I love the Grove Park Inn. My family used to go up there every year between Thanksgiving and Christmas and check out the gingerbread houses and all the decorations.
They had the gingerbread house competition going on. So we saw all of those. It seemed like for some reason all we saw were like the kids' entries.
Uh-huh.
So like the middle schoolers, but they were still really good. It was nice.
So which one of this place, this resort hotel, it's a very, if I remember, I'll put a link in the show notes to the Grove Park Inn, but it has a bunch of different restaurants. Which one did you guys end up going to for?
So we went to a relatively new one. I think it's called View 1919. It's only been open for a year and a half, maybe 2 years at the most. Most people were there to go to the Blue Ridge dining room, which is like the big dining room. It overlooks kind of all of Asheville, and they usually have a big buffet set up for Thanksgiving, but that one was sold out pretty well in advance of us deciding to do this. So, but yeah, we had a nice meal. It was a nice 3-course, fixed price type of deal. Some sort of turkey plate.
Nice. When we were up there, we always do the buffet breakfast at the Blue Ridge dining room or whatever. Good memories. Good stuff.
And I'm sorry if you can hear a bunch of dogs barking in the background. It's a super nice day here today, like 60 degrees and sunny. So everyone's outside taking care of their yard work, and they have their dogs outside. And I think our dogs are barking at other people's dogs right now, so I apologize for that.
Your microphone is just doing a great job of rejecting that noise. I don't hear it at all.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, same deal here with the rainy weather out the window because it's been raining nonstop here. So if you guys listen to if you actually hear any raining or thunder or any of that stuff, I'm sorry.
Well, you know what? I think now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to boot the both of you off the show because we can't have that.
Yeah,
No.
I know.
All right. It was fun.
Okay,
while it lasted.
so it was good. Bye,
Yeah.
guys.
All right. So here we are. It is episode 197, and we do apologize for not being able to record earlier in this week. I know that you're listening to this going, about time you posted this darn podcast, Jeff. But I was out in California taking care of some more business, and Rick was out flying, and Dr. Steph really wasn't her fault at all. We can't blame her for
No,
anything.
I was here. I had
Yeah.
nothing going on.
So it was Dr. Miami Rick and Jeff's fault for not getting to you sooner. But we're recording this on a Saturday, on the 5th of December. And, you know what? Before we move on any further, I wanted to let you know, Rick, that I listened to the latest episode of Airplane Geeks. And
Oh, yeah.
you did a great job on that show, as
Hey,
Dr.
thank
Steph
you,
did as
guys.
well when she was on. And so if I know that most of the people listening to this podcast also subscribe to the Airplane Geeks podcast, so probably by now have already heard your eloquence on the show. But if not, check out the Airplane Geeks show, and there are a great bunch of guys over there.
Absolutely. Great bunch of guys. I had a blast. We had really interesting conversations on different topics, and great bunch of guys. I had a great time, and apparently I guess the number of people that are heading over to Farnborough next year keeps growing and growing and growing because one of the guys from the Airplane Geeks show is going to be there as well. So it's just going to be a great time over there with people from all sorts of podcasts and walks of life, and just having a great time at that.
Yeah, the assistant producer, Brian, we know him as Pasadena Brian, is going to attempt to join us over there. It's going to be, I don't know, we're going to fill a huge auditorium full of people, I think.
It's going to be great.
We
Looking
have to
forward
find
that.
some place to all get together.
Hey, if you want an Acme Airlines t-shirt, you should quickly go to teespring.com/Acme shirt because the campaign ends on Monday, and you can still order a shirt and get it in time for Christmas, at least here in the United States, as far as shipping is concerned. So again, that's Teespring, teespring.com/Acme shirt. Campaign ends on Monday. So get your shirt and get it today. And with that, let's move on to the Java Jive by the Ink Spots.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
I love coffee, I love tea, I love the Java Jive and it loves me. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup. Decided to go a little bit higher that time.
I can't go that high.
It was. I can't either, actually.
Oh, come on. One of these, when we're together again, all three of us, we're going to record a trio singing this.
Nice.
A cappella. No, probably not. So while they're doing a great job of singing in the background, let's talk about the Coffee Fund. That's your way to support the APG show, the Airline Pilot Guy show, with your financial resources. And what the heck do we use the Coffee Fund funds for? Well, we use them to buy coffee and beer and other things that we're not going to tell you about. No, I'm just kidding. We use it to offset the costs of doing the program. We have many, many associated costs with the podcast. It's not free. It is to you, but not to us. And the three of us are heading over to the UK next summer, and we're going to need all the help we can get to help fund our trip over there and the hotels and mass quantities of coffee and beer. So if you're interested in helping us out, please consider doing so by heading over to the airlinepilotguy.com/coffee page of the site. And since the last episode, we have Steve Trumbull, his recurrent donation to the Coffee Fund Classic, and 2 new patrons. We have Paul Brerin and Dave Stevens. So welcome to the Coffee Fund cadre, all of you. And if you're interested again in joining, please check out all the details at airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. A cup. Ooh. Okay, that's enough of that. Time for the news.
Stand by for news.
China will mandate that its air traffic controllers use only English when communicating with pilots of any airline starting in the year 2017. Earlier this year, pilots from 3 Southeast Asian airlines had expressed concern about the lack of a common language among all pilots tuned into the frequency to communicate with Beijing Capital International Airport. Quote, "We took the feedback from the pilots of the 3 airlines seriously to make a decision for a common language to be used," according to Zhao Yun from the Civil Aviation Administration of China. The move will improve situational awareness for foreign pilots. By communicating in English, pilots will be aware of the position of every aircraft in the airspace, said Zhao. So, we've been saying that all along here. I mean, communication is so important in safety. And, we've had this discussion before about, using different languages on frequency. And Rick even has experience with it. But he luckily speaks more than one language. But many of us out there, like me, only speak one. And it's kind of not distracting, but it's concerning to me, a English-only speaker that, I have my... Okay, stop it. Did you hear that?
What happened? No, I didn't hear it.
Apparently, I said something that Siri recognized as saying, "Hey, Siri." Okay. But why is it not coming out of?
I found a Starbuzz hookah lounge on Alpharetta Highway.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Appreciate that, Siri.
Thanks, Siri.
I think Siri wants to leave some feedback.
Okay, what I'm going to do at this point is turn my phone off because that's a major distraction. That's happened to me a couple times now. It's like listening to something on the radio. Yeah, and all of a sudden, Siri's, my phone's talking, and Siri's trying to communicate with me.
I don't think I have Siri turned on that way.
Yeah, I should probably turn it off.
There's a setting you can turn that off, so it won't just voice activate.
Okay, so we were talking about the fact that I think enhancing safety by having only one language on frequency, especially, if you're just communicating with people of a certain language and no other, foreign pilots are on frequency, I can see that that'd be okay. But, when one of us only English speakers comes on frequency and then everybody else is being talked to in their own language, it's, I think you're decreasing the margin of safety, in my opinion. What do you think?
Exactly right. And as you said, we've talked about this on the show several times, and that's the reason why English is the international language for aviation. And so, it's important to have everybody be on the same page as far as ATC comms is concerned, because that way everybody can make their own. Everybody can have their own mental picture as far as situational awareness is concerned, and to kind of know what to expect based on ATC instructions to an aircraft in front of you, and just to make sure and have an idea of where everybody is. So the guys down in Brazil, they do a great job with English ATC. Guys down in Latin America, Spanish-speaking countries, they do a great job down there, and a lot of them, most of them are not native English speakers, and as such, a lot of credit goes to them, because of the fact that they had to learn a language that's not their own. And, on top of that, learn to communicate with aircraft in that language that's not their own. So, big props to them for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess if it wasn't English, it would be, I mean, the biggest thing is just have a common language.
Right.
You know? Everyone's going to be understanding and hearing and listening to the same thing and be in the loop.
They say that problems are not expected with the implementation because most Chinese pilots and air traffic controllers have taken mandatory 6-month English courses before starting their initial training. That rule took effect in 1998. So we're glad. I applaud.
6 months does not seem like a very long time, though. But
no,
I guess
but you know,
job specific.
The more you exercise it, though, I think the better you get. So,
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway, so I just thought that was worth mentioning. And this as well, and this is one of those feel-good stories. One of the world's top rugby sevens sides, and I don't understand rugby that well as a side, like a team. And the way the article is written, it seems like
I don't know, but I think rugby's like football for men.
So we heard.
Oh man,
Just saying.
yeah, okay. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but that probably deserved a rim shot. Better late than never, I say. And of course, that's what.
That's what she said.
That's what she said.
Okay. Anyway, let me start over here. One of the world's top rugby seven sides, Fiji, is renowned for its blinding pace, dazzling attack, and ferocious defense. Its players command respect through their unique playing style and dominance. Off their field, their humility is to be marveled. This is from news.com/au. They were on a Virgin Australia flight from Nadi to Brisbane when there was a mid-flight emergency. One traveler fell ill or into a serious condition early in the flight and remained so for the majority of the trip as the plane flew back to Australia. As soon as the severity of the situation became apparent, Virgin staff rushed to tend to the woman, working quickly to provide the highest level of care available. Almost immediately, the Fijian team doctor, coach, and physiotherapist went to the distressed woman to offer their assistance. 2 other passengers with medical training helped with the woman, who was falling in and out of consciousness. So while all this is going on, they had already started the meal service, and while dealing with the prospect of a serious medical emergency, the air hostesses found themselves forced to juggle the demands of, attending to this woman and also continuing and cleaning up of the lunch service that they had started. So in an attempt to take the pressure off, the Fijian players offered to serve the food to the rest of the plane. And they actually helped clean up, pick up, etc. during the thing. There's some pictures here in this article of these very, very large men in the aisles, basically doing the flight attendant's job of serving and picking up. So that was pretty cool, I thought. Are you all still there?
It's
okay.
Interesting. Yep. They're like walking sideways because they can't fit through the aisls. Like
hold on, I'll just turn this way.
Nobody's asking for seconds because they might get bopped in the head.
Yeah, you don't want to. You don't want to mess with these flight attendants.
Yeah, no, but really cool story.
Yeah, and one player even assisted with the treatment of an elderly woman holding her oxygen mask over her face for over an hour. So. Yeah, wow. Very, very cool story.
And before we move on, I wanted to share a little tiny story. When I used to fly passengers, I used to have this in-flight service manager or chief purser flight attendant guy who was an actual MMA fighter. And I used to think to myself, man, I hope that whenever it is that I happen to get one of these disruptive passengers on board, this guy is my chief purser, because there'll be no messing around if this guy's on board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's who you want. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
That's what I'm talking about.
Or an entire rugby team.
Yeah, that'll lead to
even better. Work. All right. Let's see. Oh, well, I need to find this bit of kit. And now the YouTube video will be banned. An American Airlines pilot an American pilot, not an American Airlines pilot, was arrested in Peru. He was at the airport there after the police there claimed they found 22 pounds of cocaine in one of his bags, although he denies it belongs to him. His name is Kenneth Herrick. He was arrested at Jorge Chavez Airport in the city of Callao. Is that right? Is that the way you pronounce that?
Yeah, but close enough.
Okay. Is currently being held by Peruvian authorities. Did you guys get a chance to look at the video?
Oh, I didn't see the video.
I didn't see the video. I just read the article. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a video, and he's standing there, and they're asking him questions, and he's like pointing down. He goes, "Oh yeah, these are my bags." And they in the pictures there, Steph and Rick, it doesn't show. He's standing in front of his suitcase and his flight kit, and in the video, he's like, pointing to both of them and go, "Oh yeah, these are my bags, but the stuff that you found with the cocaine in it, that's not mine." And
yeah, that I don't know how that got in my bag.
Yeah, and
exactly.
Somebody, I think on Twitter on the said something like, "How do you not notice that your luggage is 22 pounds heavier than it normally is?" That's a good question.
Shoes are extra heavy today.
Maybe he's been hitting the gym a lot, and 22 pounds it ain't no thing.
That could be, or maybe he was working out so hard he thought that everything feels like it's 22 pounds heavier.
I don't know. I'm looking at a picture of the guy. I'm going to say that's not the case.
Yeah, I think he's going to be spending a lot of time in this country, at least for the next 5 years or so, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah,
anyway.
pretty sad situation. I mean, I never understood why anybody would. I mean, I guess obviously the quick financial, gain from that one time, or at least the number of times that you happen to get by without getting caught, but still putting in, your career in jeopardy over something as stupid as that is something that I really can't wrap my head around. And I know of several cases of pilots in different airlines, including my own, that have actually had this happen to them. And I keep thinking, really? I mean, come on, it's just a matter of time before you get caught. Is it really worth it?
No, it's not.
The answer
worth
is
it.
no.
Exactly.
And every time I don't know how many times do people get away with it. Maybe people get away with it a lot more.
Maybe it's happening a lot more than we actually know. I mean,
yeah. And actually, what I've heard from, I guess, authorities here, and I know people that work in law enforcement here. Basically, they let you slide a couple of times until they have enough evidence to build a case against you. So you might think you're getting away with it, but they're on to you until they're like, okay, this is the last time, and we know you've done this, these times, and then we have a case against you, and now you're done.
So how many times would you say that they let you go before they actually move forward? And I just need to write this down, just so we're giving advice to everybody. If you want to make some,
this is just purely for
If you want to know, become a supporter of the APG show,
and then we'll let you know.
The skinny.
One of the perks.
Just kidding.
How do you think that our APG fund has grown so large? No, I'm just kidding. Especially if you're the authorities. Everything's cool. It hasn't really grown that large. Thank you.
That's what she said.
Yeah, you're right. That is what she said.
That's what she said.
Okay. Let's move on, shall we, before we get into any more trouble? Okay.
Good idea.
Well, finally, we need to talk about the final report issued about the Indonesian AirAsia Flight 8501 that crashed into the Java Sea back when? 28th of December last year. And
wow.
Yeah, can you believe it? Mm-hmm. And the investigation was not as transparent, we should say, as recent investigations have been here in the United States by the National Transportation Safety Board. And they really have been keeping pretty mum about all the details of this accident. And it was just released this past week, and it's very disconcerting because we learned that basically there were some rudder malfunctions. It was an Airbus A320, and this rudder system had been written up several times in the previous months leading up to this accident, but in just the few days before this accident, it was, these events were occurring more and more frequently, and they were going by the maintenance procedure to fix, quote unquote, the problem. But of course, that was not fixing the problem. And when they took off that fateful morning on their way to Singapore, I guess, from Surabaya, Java, they experienced a couple of these alerts on their ICAS system that said that this rudder system was, there was some kind of a fault. And
it's called ECAM and Airbus.
Oh, ECAM. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Thank you very much. I'm not an Airbus driver, but I should know better. And so they did the procedure, the QRH procedure. I'm not sure if they call it a QRH, but anyway, whatever their flight manual procedure is. And that didn't seem to help. And at some point, the captain, it appears, initiated a procedure that they had been doing on the ground, and in a procedure that he had witnessed a mechanic or engineer had performed in the past.
Well, there was one report I saw that the whoever the mechanic was said that they could do that again, if it happened again.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's all, all well and good, I guess. But when you pull the flight augmentation computer number 1 and flight augmentation computer number 2, essentially what happens is the airplane is now without flight augmentation computers. And what does that mean? Well, you are a pilot. You fly the airplane. You use your manual flying skills because the autopilot system kicks off, as well as the auto thrust system.
You're telling me I have to manually fly this thing now?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
So when this happened, I guess there was a 2-degree deflection in the rudder that may have had something to do with the rudder fault system, or the fault that had been, showing up in the ECAM system so many times. And so just that little slight deflection of the rudder caused the airplane to start banking. And it banked and it banked. And I believe this went on for like 9 seconds.
9 seconds.
Before anybody attempted to make any kind of correction with the flight controls. At this point, I think they were up to like 54 degrees of bank. And they're at anywhere from 32,000 to 37,000 feet. And they ended up exceeding a climb rate of 6,000 feet per minute, about twice the maximum rate that a commercial aircraft should climb in still air at that altitude. And basically, they lost control of the airplane. Another very Air France 447-ish kind of incident where they allowed the airplane to get into a situation where it was in an upset condition, and they did not use the right controls to recover the upset airplane.
Right. What's going to happen here is that as you climb, specifically at that altitude and at that rate, all you're doing really is you're trading altitude for airspeed. And so you keep climbing, your airspeed keeps bleeding, and it's going to get to the point where you're flying so slow through the air that you reach that critical angle of attack, and your wings basically going to stall, and you find yourself in a position where the airplane's not flying anymore. So you need to know what to do to pull yourself out of that condition. But if you weren't able to rectify a slight rudder input with opposite aileron, or by just basically canceling out the rudder input manually, then I don't know how you're going to be able to pull yourself out of a stall. So lose situation.
So is that
to me, the 9 seconds is a really surprising thing. That's a long time. Like, I read that and then I sat and I counted out 9 seconds. That's a long time to sit there and just do nothing to manually correct that situation.
Right. Now, there's another thing. Once I don't know what it is in Airbuses, but in a Boeing, once you get past 35 degrees of roll, you're going to get this very annoying voice over the speakers going bank angle, bank angle, bank angle, letting you know that you've exceeded that 35-degree bank angle, and all you got to do is basically roll wings level. And 9 seconds. How do you let that much time go by without doing anything?
Yeah, it wasn't a snap roll. It was just a very gradual, a nice, easy roll over 9 seconds before they went, wait a minute, look at that attitude indicator thingy. That's not right. The French First Officer Remy Emmanuel Placel was at the controls just before the stall warning sounded. The stall warning sounded the entire time except for a brief period of time where it stopped. There is, interestingly, the report did not specifically conclude that pilot error caused the crash. I would disagree with that. While detailing the chain of events leading to the loss of Flight 8501, one of the investigators, the NTSC's Utomo, referred to an apparent miscommunication between the pilots based on the recordings on the CVR, the cockpit voice recorder, and said that the malfunction should not have led to a total loss of control had they followed the recommended procedure. The example of miscommunication between the pilots is when the plane is in a critical stalling condition. The co-pilot misunderstood the captain's command, quote, pull down. And now, if somebody's yelled out pull down to me, I'm not sure exactly what I would understand that to mean either. Instead of pull the airplane's nose down, pushing up the stick to regain speed and escape the stall, he was pulling down the stick the other way, putting the pitch up, because the captain is also pushing up on the stick, and because Airbus has a dual input system, the plane doesn't change its condition and keeps stalling until the end of the black box recording. So, this is that paragraph is really kind of hard to understand exactly, because I think it's being translated from their language to English. Mm-hmm. So it's not clear to me exactly what all that meant, except to say that looks like there was some kind of miscommunication of what the captain was telling the first officer to do. But as we have said so many times here, he should not have had to tell the first officer how to fly the airplane, how to recover from this upset situation. Roll wings level. That's all you needed to do in this situation, and you'd be flying again.
Exactly right. And it's a matter of you interpreting your artificial horizon. If you see a lot of blue and you have no airspeed, that's not an attitude that you want to be in, particularly when you ran out of airspeed, because you're going to stall. So roll wings level, get some air going over the wings, regain that lift, and then pull out of it. So, but hey.
I think I read somewhere also that, so don't quote me on this, but something to the effect that the pilots at AirAsia never ever received upset training, or if they did, it was like very early on in their training, and it wasn't at a high altitude. We're seeing that over and over again, where these upsets occur at cruise altitudes, and the pilots have never been trained on what to do and how the airplane feels, and what its performance is in that envelope.
Right, and then I guess, not to their credit, but in my experience, I'm a purely civilian pilot. I never went through military training, and that is a plus that you military guys and gals have over us, because you got to fly, high performance aircraft and doing maneuvers and flying in attitudes that most civilian pilots will never get to experience, and not only the attitudes, but the G forces that go along with those types of maneuvers. For us, civilian pilots, we do go through upset attitude training in our flight simulators, or level D flight simulators, which are, and depending on the simulator that you're flying or practicing in, some are better than others. I guess visually the maneuvers look pretty convincing, but when you're flying a simulator that's bolted to the ground and it's basically actuated by hydraulic jacks, you are not going to get the G forces that go along with these types of maneuvers. But there are, some basic things that you look for and then you aim for when you find yourself in an upset, and that is, and I'll never forget this, if you are rolled inverted, then you're going to roll, which way are you supposed to roll the aircraft to go back to a level attitude? And there is a little arrow shaped thing at the very top of your attitude indicator, which is going to line up with an inverted arrow on the frame of that attitude indicator. And that's going to tell you, by looking at that, when you're flying wings level. And that little pointer there is called the sky pointer. And so if you're flying inverted, what you want to do is you want to roll the shortest way to the sky pointer, and that's how I remember it. So if you're inverted, roll the shortest way to the sky pointer, and try to keep the maneuver unloaded. So basically, what I mean by that is try to keep it at 1G, because you don't want to over G the aircraft, and then hopefully roll wings level and then fly out that way. But then and this is something that I've wanted to do, and maybe Santa will get me one of these certificates in the mail this year. What's it called? An acrobatic flight training package, yep. I guess. I've got a good friend down here that flies an extra 300 out of Tamami Airport, and I've never flown high performance maneuvers like those, and I feel like it's it'd be good for any civilian pilot out there to go out there and actually feel what these maneuvers feel like, because you never know. It's flight control systems nowadays are so sophisticated that they basically keep you away from that kind of flying. But when something like this happens, when you don't have these protections, you need to know what to do to pull yourself out of the situation.
Sure. I agree with that 100%. But at the same time, I spend a lot of time kind of in a flight training environment. I fly out of a pretty active flight school. I'm usually a lot of times flying with instructors. And I mean, this is just basic stuff though. Stalls, stall recovery, you know, it's always amazing to me to read these types of reports when these fortunately very rare situations happen, that pilots get themselves into this type of situation in the first place, because that's basic stuff.
Yeah.
So
I'm a strong proponent of, if you have never experienced any of these unusual attitudes in a real airplane, that you know, there be formal programs to do this so that individual pilots don't have to pay for it. But you know, if you have some extra cash, it may be worth your life to experience some of this high performance acrobatic kind of training.
Yeah, because I don't see the airlines taking care of this.
No,
at all.
it's gonna cost too much money. Although my airline did send some representatives to an outfit that is offering that kind of training to its you know, as a service to airlines, and haven't heard anything from that. But that was a few months back. So, you know, it may be that my airline is going to consider doing that based on the experience that its pilots have. You know, when I was hired by Acme back 27 years ago, I'd say like 90% of us, maybe even higher percentage, were military trained, and we had that kind of experience in our training. And now I'd say the mix is more of a 50-50 blend. And so perhaps the airline is taking a look at that and saying, you know what, we need to expose these guys and gals to this kind of situation. Because it's one thing, as Rick said, it's one thing even in the most sophisticated full access flight simulator to see what, you know, an upset looks like, but you get a little bit of a feel of what it feels like, but not really. The simulator can only do so much to simulate those G-forces, etc. So anyway, the question Tony asks in the chat room, we're doing this live on blab.im. He says, oh, this is for you, Rick. How unusual would it be to pull circuit breakers in flight? I can't answer because he asked you.
I mean, and I did answer in the chat room there, but for you guys and gals who are not in the chat room and just listening to the podcast on iTunes and other platforms, usually we don't pull circuit breakers in flight, and we don't do anything that is not instructed by a checklist. Now, if there's a situation where a checklist does bring you to reset circuit breakers, then you do. If not, then you don't. And I can't think of any checklist that tells you that you should reset circuit breakers, at least in my aircraft. And it's not something that I've ever done. And I know for a fact that the one set of circuit breakers that you never reset ever are those that are associated with the fuel boost pumps, because the amount of current and energy that those fuel boost pumps require is such that if those circuit breakers popped out, then there is really something wrong with the system, and you don't want to be messing around with electricity and fuel. That'd be quite an explosive combination, no pun intended.
I do it all the time.
And
you know, get bored, and then you just go, hey, I wonder what happened if I pulled this circuit breaker.
Well, and there's other instances of accidents that have been related to this. I can't remember which incident it was where the pilots were pulling the circuit breaker for an alarm that was commonly going off. Do you know which one I'm talking about? I'm trying to think. This was a long time ago.
A long time ago. Yeah, there was an accident.
Yeah.
It was, I believe, Northwest Airlines, a DC-9, that was taking off out of Long Beach, I believe. And they deactivated one of the warning horns for one of the systems. I can't remember why. It was like
I can't remember which one. I mean, I guess it was one that would just go off, you know. I mean, it was very, perhaps overly sensitive. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I think it had something to do with the fact that on DC-9 MD-80 series aircraft, if you push both throttles up above a certain deflection on the ground, then this irritating takeoff warning horn system starts going off. And I think in order to avoid that, and the way I avoid it now is I just use one throttle, not both. And then it doesn't go off. But anyway, I think that was the situation in this case where they decided to pull that breaker, and because of that, there was not a takeoff warning horn when it was appropriate, and they didn't have their slats and flaps set for takeoff, and they went barreling down the runway and tried to take off, no flap, no slat, and if they had a really super long runway, they could have done it, but they didn't.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I can think of one instance when I would pull circuit breakers. And I remember in my initial 7.6 training, a couple years ago, my instructor said that based on an accident, it was a 757 out of Lima, down in Peru. It took off, and they had just done some cleaning to the aircraft, and they had taped over the the static ports, and then the aircraft took off with the static ports taped over. And they were getting both overspeed and stall warnings at the same time, and they didn't really know what was going on, and they were getting all sorts of alarms and pull-ups and overspeeds and stalls, and they eventually lost the aircraft. He said that in that case, if you have, because in our types of aircraft, the kind of aircraft that Captain Steph and I fly, Captain Jeff and I fly.
Thank you.
We have not
Thank you, Dr.
only,
Rick.
well, you're welcome, Captain Steph. You have not only pedostatic airspeed, but you also have inertial ground speed, and so you can basically cross-check your airspeed with your inertial ground speed, and that could give you a pretty good idea of how fast you're going. And so if you get to that point, then my instructor was like, well, if you feel like those alarms blaring in your ear are distracting you and keeping you from operating the aircraft safely under those conditions, then just go ahead and pull the circuit breaker for the speakers and the flight deck. And it's a good idea. If it's something that's that's really irritating and it's keeping you from flying the aircraft safely. But I really can't think of any other instance where I would pull circuit breakers in flight.
No.
Oh, and as far as taking off without flaps on a really long runway, another factor that not we, but I guess the onboard performance tool in Boeing airplanes takes into account when figuring out what your maximum takeoff speed can be is, believe it or not, the maximum rotational velocity of the wheels or the tires on the airplane, which are rated to 235 miles per hour, not knots, but miles per hour. And so if you go past that ground speed, then your tires may not hold up structurally. So there is actually a maximum speed that you need to be off the ground by, otherwise your tires will basically disintegrate.
Who needs them?
Exactly.
You can have your tires. Just leave me my wings.
Exactly.
All right. So, well, I'm sure we'll be talking more about this incident, but it's just, again, another piece of evidence that's showing that probably the number one safety hazard out there is manual flying skills, or the lack thereof. And we really need to do something about that. So, and by the way, a plug for our APG community member, Ison, who is doing the survey. For those of you listening to the show right now who are airline pilots, please go to the link in the show notes. I think she is still conducting the survey. She's a PhD student doing a study, her thesis, basically her doctoral thesis on the relationship between man and machine, and how automation can be improved to make it safer. And and one more last. Oh, go ahead, Rick.
No, I was going to say that I already took it. It's it was a great survey.
Yeah, it doesn't take long at all. It's very few questions. Yeah. And I'll give you the answer. It's A, B, A, D. No, I'm just kidding. I don't remember anything of that. There's no right answer, actually. And if you take the survey and you contradict everything that I believe in, then don't take the survey. What was the last thing I was going to say? Oh, we had talked about the Tesla sedan Model S, I think, that in a recent update on the system.
Autopilot or autodrive.
Yeah, the autopilot system that they have. Have you heard some of the stories out there where people are getting so accustomed to the car driving itself, they're getting out of the driver's seat and engaging in all kinds of different activities, and supposedly these things are on YouTube. And Elon Musk was saying that he was concerned.
That's horrible.
About this, because he clearly says that you have to be sitting in the driver's seat with your hands basically on the controls, just in case for whatever reason, the autopilot system stops working, but apparently people are putting a lot of trust. And I can kind of see a parallel. You can kind of see a parallel with the aviation world of automation. However, in an airplane, at least you have a few seconds to go, oh, the autopilot system just clicked off, and, you know, maybe not 9 seconds to recover from it, but, you know, in a car, you have like fractions of a second to recover from a situation like that. So they said that in future updates to the Tesla autopilot system, they're going to take away some of the automation that they had employed because they're...
Or maybe either that, or they should have like a pressure switch in the seat or something.
That's one of the things I think they're talking about doing. Now, you know what, they're just going to get a sack of potatoes and stick it there.
Right. A brake on the accelerator with a broomstick propped up against the seat.
The car won't know the difference.
No.
Really, people? Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, well, you know, come on. Human nature.
I have very little patience for stupidity.
What are you going to do?
I know I have plenty of people I know who have told me that driving for them is a way to get from point A to point B. They do not care for driving at all. They would be more than happy to have a car that drives itself. And I can imagine there's people out there who would do stuff like this, and apparently there are. And then they take video of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got
and
two
they have
words.
enough money to buy a Tesla.
Yes.
Yeah, I
These
got
are
two
not
words.
people who
Face
are...
palm.
More sense than...
Good.
No. What's the old saying? I don't know. But, yeah, and I was going up the stairs or the escalator at Atlanta International just the other day, coming back from California. We have a brand new Porsche driving experience center, which, by the way, is on the approach end of runway 26 right, which is like probably the worst place to put a complex like that, because you know what we pilots are doing. We're going, oh, look at that. You're looking at all the cars going around the course and everything.
There's my next ride.
Yeah. Well, anyway, going up the escalator, I'm looking at this big sign, you know, saying, hey, you know, if you enjoy driving, you should check out the port. I forgot what the verbiage was, but I'm thinking, you know, there are still those of us out there who enjoy driving. And I think for this automated car system to work, everybody's got to be in an automated car. And I think it's going to be hard to pry our cars out of our hands, you know, to relinquish all that fun. You know, what is a company
I don't want
like...
to give up driving.
No.
I like driving.
I do too. I like flying too.
And I'm kind of distrustful of people who do not like to drive their own vehicles.
They should be all eliminated. No, I'm just kidding.
That's right. No, I'm just kidding.
All right.
But if it's not your thing, you know, whatever.
If it's not your thing, then take the train.
That's right.
Or Uber. Let somebody else do the driving. All right. It's time now to move on to your feedback.
Captain, incoming message.
All right, we have a lot of feedback and we have little time to get it all in, so we're going to go ahead and just hit it hard. And let's start with some audio feedback from Nick Knack Jack.
Hey, Captain Jeff, it's Nicolas of Unicom podcast fame and maybe soon Airplane Geeks fame, depending on when that interview airs. But anyway, I had a question for you, Rick and Steph. What would you deem a safe taxi speed to be? I ask this because I've had an instructor say on a small general aviation aircraft, taxi no faster than you could walk, and that makes sense for a small GA airplane. But I would think that you could taxi quite a bit faster in a jet. I would think maybe 30 knots ground speed, but the ACARS software that I use thinks that's too fast. So just wondering what you think is a safe taxi speed. Thanks, and keep up the great show. Bye.
V1. No,
there you go.
Too fast.
With the spoilers out to make sure you don't get airborne.
That's right.
No, just kidding.
I can't say anything. He didn't ask me. He asked Rick and Steph. Go ahead.
So I'll answer as far as the 777 and 76 are concerned. 30 knots, basically what's in the manual there, basically on straightaways, no faster than 30 knots. Our ground speed indicator on our navigation display will actually go from large font to small font when we go over 30 knots. But it really depends on the conditions out there. I mean, you don't want to be taxiing too fast when it's, you know, slippery or snowy or icy out there. And obviously you have to think about, how fast you want to be going in a turn, how much of an angular difference there is between the taxiway you're on and the taxiway you're going to be taxiing onto. And so, it's a good idea to kind of use the energy that the aircraft has to try to not put on power when you don't need to, because in airplanes like the ones I fly, the 777s got huge, turbofan engines, which at idle put out something like 10,000 pounds of thrust. So when you go a little bit over that, that breakaway power might be, higher than what you need it to be. And if you have something in close proximity to you behind you. And so just basically as fast enough so that you are able to use your momentum, and not as fast as, and not past 30 knots in all cases. That's basically what I got on that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm not supposed to answer that.
And I mean, in general aviation aircraft, you can go maybe a little bit faster than walking speed. You're never going to get to the end of a long taxiway if you're going that slow. But yeah, I mean, it's basically like what Rick said. You want to. It's all about still managing energy there. You don't want to be riding your brakes the whole way, but I mean, you can, once you're going, you can be pretty close to idle, and you'll continue at a reasonable speed without having to hit the brakes too often.
Yeah, it really all depends on the conditions, as Rick mentioned, and the type of airplane you're flying. I noticed that on the 10.9 plate for the airport diagram page on Jefferson's for Atlanta International Airport and several others, the large wide body airplanes, there's a note on the page that says, for airplanes with a greater wingspan than this, the maximum speed is 20 knots. And I don't know how many airports have that kind of restriction, but my airplane falls within the narrow body, the smaller airplane sizes. So there's technically no speed restriction, but you do have to be careful, if it's a little slick out there, or if you're in an area with some rubber deposits on the surface, you have to be careful, so.
Exactly right. And anything over, at least in the airplane that I fly, anything over 30 knots, there is a FOQA event, or a flight operations quality assurance event, recorded, sent to the operations office. And then you get a nice friendly call from the chief pilot going, where was the fire? So
love that system. Love that system.
I love it. Great stuff.
Yeah. All right. Well, Nicolas Jackson. Oh, by the way, he mentioned Unicom podcast that he does to iFly Sim X, and he said on the Airplane Geeks podcast, and he was on episode number 377, Flight Simulation on the PC. So if you want to hear him on that great show, check it out. I'll put a link in the show notes for you. And let's see, let's move on with some more feedback. This is from let's see. Andrew writes, this week I took a short trip to Seattle. This was, by the way, the 14th of November, so it was a couple weeks ago. He took a short trip to Seattle to tour the Boeing Everett factory where the 747, 777, and 787 are manufactured, as well as the Museum of Flight. I'd highly recommend both to any fellow aviation enthusiasts. The Boeing factory tour was excellent. The size of the facility is astounding. It's the largest building in the world by volume. And the areas outside the factory buildings is full of brand new aircraft in a variety of liveries. It was interesting to watch planes take off and land for test flights from the observation deck at Payne Field, and it was very intriguing to hear the history of Boeing. It made me feel slightly guilty for flying to Seattle on a Virgin American A319. The next day, I took a trip to the Museum of Flight, which is adjacent to another Boeing facility and another municipal airport. The museum was quite large and had numerous historic aircraft, including a Concorde, a Boeing 707 used as Air Force One, and dozens of other historic civilian and military aircraft. There was numerous staff available to answer questions and explain more about the aircraft, as well as give tours. The museum even has a restaurant overlooking the airfield as well as exhibits for kids to get them interested in the wonderful world of aviation. I'd highly recommend the Museum of Flight to the APG community. As a sidebar, I believe you have an APG fan at the Boeing facility, as I found a sign on their paper towel dispenser asking visitors to, quote, help us go green, use the hand dryer.
We're going green. We're going green. We're gonna take care of the earth. We're going green.
Under an hour this time before we got to use that for the first time. And
I know,
thank you
it's
very
good.
much. Yeah.
We haven't
I know.
used it that early in quite a while.
I don't think we used it in the last episode.
Did we not?
We did. The one before that, we did not.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
Okay.
Oh, boy. Wow. That's sad. That's a sad,
Lacking.
sad situation.
It's sad, so sad.
Okay. But interestingly, he sent a picture of this, and there's a little speaker there that plays, "We're going green." No, it doesn't do that. Okay. Anyway, he said, take care. Keep the podcast coming. It's a highlight of my week. Thank you, Andrew in Los Angeles. And keep listening and keep sending in feedback. We do appreciate it.
Hey, it's the highlight of my week, too.
Yeah, me too.
Me 3.
Okay. Heavy maintenance practices. This is from, Ken. He sent a link to a VanityFair.com article about airplane maintenance, and basically it's talking about the fact that many, if not most, of the major U.S. legacy airlines, all the large airlines here in our country, end up sending their airplanes to maintenance facilities outside of our country because it's cheaper. And the article talks about the fact that this may be cause for concern. And I do believe it is. Thank you, Ken, for sending the link to that article, and we'll put the link in the show notes if you want to check it out yourself. Any commentary about that?
I think the reason for the concern, though, is just because, when it's outside the country, there's truly no such thing as a surprise inspection of the facility. So they have plenty of advance notice to know when people are coming to look in on things and see how things are going, and it may not accurately reflect how procedures are being handled from day to day. So
what?
But I tell you, I mean, in my experience, we have done and I've been on several flights that have, I've taken aircraft to facilities overseas, throughout my career, to facilities in Mexico, for example. When we first started transitioning to winglets on our 767s, we used to install some of them in-house. But then basically the demand was such that we couldn't handle all of our airplanes at our facility in Santiago, and so we had to outsource some of that stuff to Mexico. And they do great work there. We do our C checks on our 777s at both the Delta facility in Atlanta and the Lufthansa facility in Frankfurt, and they do great work there as well. And so, yeah, I can understand how there might be, some people.
Right. Well, I mean, that's not to, it's not to say that the work being done there is not to the highest quality and highest standards. Right. I think that's just a concern that maybe the oversight is not where they would like it to be.
Exactly. And my company does maintenance for a lot of different folks. But when it comes to working on, those major checks for our airline, we send them to Mexico as well. Mm-hmm. So anyway, just an interesting article. Take a look, take a read, see what you think. Next bit of feedback is from our good friend and flight attendant, Tyler.
Hey, y'all. It's Tyler. Hanging out on layover at Charlotte, North Carolina, super late at night, like no joke, 1:30 in the morning, laying down, getting ready to go to sleep, listening to episode 194 and some of the feedback, and I hear this conversation about some seatbelt signs. Well, as you can imagine, my ears were burning, so now, of course, I'm sending you some audio feedback regarding that. A couple things I wanted to touch on real quick. You guys were talking about, how the system works and all that kind of stuff in the United States, how we tend to leave it on, for a good amount of time. I think that's a good thing. I really, really do. Coming from the cabin crew, flight attendant side of things, it's a great system. Not just for the service-wise, but for safety-wise as well. Service-wise, it's extremely, extremely difficult when there's passengers up moving about the cabin, trying to get to the bathroom. You got to tell people to wait so they're not crowding. It's, it's against FAA to congregate. It's safety. So we always tell them, you can't congregate and all that kind of stuff. So it's difficult to try to move them around with the carts. It's extremely difficult on all planes, even wide bodies. It's very difficult to maintain passenger control. If they turn that seatbelt sign off right away, 10,000 feet on the way up, cruising out to do whatever they turn it off. Like it's very, very hard to get the service going, especially on the, like you were saying, Captain Jeff, on the Mad Dogs, narrow bodies. We're kind of trained as flight attendants to, almost think like lawyers, kind of like the point that Rick was making. Legalistically, you got to think about these things. I know you said it really doesn't hold up in court, but the reality of the situation is this flight attendant signed an agreement. We signed in our employment agreement, which is kind of like a contract saying, hey, we're okay with getting up during these type of conditions, and it's at our own discretion. We always tell passengers we are informers, not enforcers, for the most part. But when it's safety related, we can be enforcers. You need to sit down, that type of thing. If we get an injury on duty as a flight attendant, that's our own fault because we know when we're supposed to be sitting out. And I know you kind of were saying that some flight attendants like to ignore some of the senior flight attendants, stuff like that. I've seen that. But my experience is that most flight attendants, when the pilots call, it's pretty bad. They kind of use that as the, hey, pilots are calling, time to sit down. High flight number one, A flight attendant, lead flight attendant, flight service manager, purser, whatever you want to call it. I fly that position a lot. And when the pilots call, we're sitting down. So I just wanted to add to the conversation. And I hope this one keeps going. It's a good topic, and I think we need to talk about it. So keep on doing what you guys are doing. Appreciate you guys. Hope to see you soon. And fly safe.
Thank you, Tyler. You make some really good points, and I can see that there's really no exact answer to the science of when do you turn off that seatbelt light. Good arguments are made on both sides of the argument. I can kind of see what Captain Al was talking about when it comes to, I think it was Captain Al talking about turning it off, and that light was, applicable to both passengers and flight attendants. And I can see Tyler's point of view, and I can, so it depends on what perspective you're coming from, I guess, but I have been thinking about it a lot more in practice and try to take into account all the different things to think about and trying to leave that light off more than I used to.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I always, back in my passenger days, thought very conservatively, and so just as Tyler said, think as a lawyer, and if that light goes on, people sit down because there's a reason why that light's going on. It's for your own safety. And then again, have a system in place where you don't leave that light on indefinitely, by using your chronometer or doing something to remind yourself to turn that light off when it's not needed anymore, because people do need to, go potty. So,
yeah, right. Turns out that most people these days ignore the darn light anyway. I witnessed that going out to California and back. And even when the airplane was kind of, bumping around quite a bit, I'm thinking, dude, have you noticed that the flight attendants are in their seats with their seatbelts on? It's not a good idea to be standing up in the aisle like you're doing. But whatever.
Yeah, I know. Those people are the same people that are, lawsuit happy. So, hey, if you get hurt, it's your own fault.
Yep, that is true. Let's see. Albert in Australia from Sydney writes, just a quick note, thought you might be interested in this article in relation to the children of the magenta, etc. Thank you for your very interesting podcast. And this article is talks about the something that Rick mentions quite often. I don't have this system in my airplane, but it's a computer that helps with determining proper speeds for takeoff, etc. And we know that was a significant factor in the recent 777 incident at Miami International. Anyway, in this case, a Qantas 737 carrying 152 passengers scraped its tail on the tarmac after the pilots tapped the wrong data into an iPad linked to the aircraft's computer. And what do you, Rick, I think you're probably the best person to talk about garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, the systems on board the aircraft are very good at doing their job, but if you input wrong information in, you're gonna get wrong figures out. Hence garbage in, garbage out. It is very important to make sure that the weights that you are inserting into the flight management computer, specifically the figure of the line where you're supposed to put in your zero fuel weight and your gross takeoff weight, you got to make sure you don't switch those around. because if you list your takeoff weight as your zero fuel weight, that's where the system can kind of throw out these wrong numbers, because remember that your zero fuel weight is the weight of the aircraft plus the passengers plus all the operating fluids minus the fuel. And so that's going to be significantly lower than your actual takeoff weight, depending on how long your flight sector is. The problem with taking off with wrong figures or thrust settings for a lower takeoff weight is the fact that you're going to be going too slow over the ground, and you're not going to have enough air over the wings to generate the amount of lift that you need to get that aircraft off the ground at the higher weight. So what's going to happen is you're going to start rotating, and since you're going too slow, the fact that you rotate, you're increasing that angle of attack on the wings to increase the lift. But the problem is that as you're increasing lift, you're also increasing drag. Remember that when you double lift, you quadruple drag. And so if you're going too slow to take off in the first place, and then on top of that, you add the fact that you're now creating lift to try to get that aircraft off the ground with that lower power setting based on that wrong weight, then the drag is going to basically keep you on the ground, and you are going to scrape the tail. Now, there's a test that is conducted by test pilots at both Boeing and Airbus called the VMU test, and VMU stands for velocity minimum unstick, which is the lowest speed basically that the aircraft can get off the ground. And so this is a test that is conducted, and it's basically there to make sure that the aircraft can fly away when these kinds of things happen. But then again, this wouldn't happen if you paid attention to the kind of data that you're inputting into your computer. One thing. And then the other thing, I go back to my rant about timing your takeoff. And we talked about it in the last episode. When you're talking about balanced field theory concept, what we talked about in the last episode, from the second you hit takeoff thrust to the moment you hit 80 knots on that takeoff run, it's going to be 20 seconds on the nose. It happened to me yesterday in Quito. It happened to me yesterday in Bogota. It happens every time. And that is your last check to make sure that those numbers were input there correctly. Because at 80 knots, you're still at a low enough airspeed to be able to abort that takeoff, bring the aircraft to a stop, taxi off the runway without the brakes getting too hot and going, okay, what did we do wrong? So that's a last check, the last chance you got there.
In every airplane that I've flown, there's also some kind of gauge or, rule of thumb when it comes to the fact that if you know the airplane's going to be 150,000 pounds for takeoff, there's a way of going through and, like dividing in two and adding this number or whatever to get an approximate speed, like for a V1 speed, and then like presetting your bugs. Now, I know that in more modern airplanes, all this stuff that I'm talking about doesn't happen because it's all electronic displays and that kind of thing. But, you should always keep it in the back of your head that when you are expecting a certain speed, like a V1 speed, and then all of a sudden the computer or your iPad or whatever it is spitting out another speed that's significantly different than what you thought you were expecting to see, that should be triggering a red flag in your head saying, wait a minute, what happened here? Are the weights really that far off? Or did maybe only half the passengers showed up? Or maybe they're not putting on as much cargo as we had anticipated? Or maybe that figure that I used to begin with was way off. I don't know, but there's something here that's wrong that's giving making the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And I'm thinking I should probably look into this and not just, use whatever, because, you make a mistake. You put in that wrong data into the computer, whether it be an iPad, whether it be an FMS box, whatever it is, you're going to find yourself in a very dire situation. And then doing, as Rick said, making certain performance calculations as far as, accelerating to a certain speed by a certain point. And that's a good catch-all for, wait a minute, something's not right. We don't have the right power setting, or something's not right.
Exactly right.
All right. Let's see. Let's go on with some more audio feedback. And this time it's from, hang on, where is he? Wait a minute. No, it was not audio feedback. It was an article sent in by Daniel, which is very interesting, by the way. We talk about saying Roger and that kind of thing. Let's see.
Flight 209er, you are cleared for takeoff.
Roger. Huh?
LA departure frequency 123.9er.
Roger. Huh? Request vector. Over. What?
Flight 209er, clear for Vector 324.
We have clearance, Clarence.
Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Howard radio clearance, over.
That's Clarence, over. Over.
Roger.
Huh? Roger, over.
Yes, again from one of our favorite movies, Airplane.
Love that movie.
Never gets old.
According to the Straight Dope, in 1927, Roger was the word chosen to represent the letter R, which is, of course, the first letter in the word received. In other words, a pilot would receive instructions, and to indicate he had received them, he'd say, Roger. Why didn't he just say received? Well, during World War II, not everyone spoke English, but R, or Roger, became the internationally accepted way of acknowledging receipt of instructions. Of course, in 1957, the word Roger was replaced with the word Romeo, but by that time, Roger and received were synonymous. So can you imagine nowadays getting an instruction? Romeo.
That'd be a little odd. Romeo.
The article goes on to say, so what about Wilco? Its story is even simpler. It's an abbreviation of will comply. So when pilots say, Roger, Wilco, what they mean is, I've received your instructions and I will follow them. Even today, I know that you've heard this, both Rick and Steph and others watching and listening to the show, where people will improperly use, Roger and Wilco. They are distinctively different terms and each has its own meaning. One means, okay, I heard it. And the other is not only that, but I'm going to comply with your instruction.
Like when people just use them both together. It's like, okay.
That's what I always do. Roger, Wilco, over and out. Over.
Yeah, you sound so professional.
Yeah, that's me. It takes up a lot more time, but it's a lot of fun. All right. Thank you, Daniel Sinico from Italy. Anthony writes, I can confirm that on Air Canada, at least, and I've only flown domestically, the policy regarding plugging, unplugging electronic devices. Number 1, during takeoff and landing, you may only listen to your earbud-style headphones if they are plugged into the entertainment system of the aircraft. Over-the-ear or headband style is not permitted. So you can't plug them in, I guess, to your iPhone or any other device that you've brought in during takeoff and landing. If you're going to have them plugged in, they need to be plugged into the aircraft's entertainment system. And the other thing, he says, all devices must be unplugged. Oh, wait a minute. During takeoff and landing, you may only listen to your earbuds.
Well, no, he's just talking about the device itself. So like if you can't have something plugged into your phone, I guess.
Okay. But then the second thing, all devices must be unplugged during takeoff and landing. So it can't be plugged in anywhere.
Mean power plug? Is that what he was talking about?
I don't know. It looks like those are contradictions to me.
I think number 1 is to the actual, I guess, to the entertainment system, and number 2 is to a power supply. That's what I'm gathering.
Right. Well, number 1 he's talking about headphones. Number 2 he's not talking about headphones.
Well, I'm glad you guys understand what he's saying. Sorry, Anthony. Obviously, I'm not clicking today. So he goes on to say, I have always assumed that this is to facilitate egress, the thought being that earbuds, headphones would just fall to the wayside in the event of an emergency situation, and that the placement of the headphone jack on board the plane would be such as to pose a minimal tangling hazard. I can attest to the fact that having plugs sticking out of the back of seats can be a problem when trying to get in and out. I completely destroyed one unfortunate person's iPhone cable when it got snagged on my jacket. No!
Oops.
Hate when that happens.
Yeah. Thank you, Anthony, for your feedback, and thank you for your financial contributions as well. Big shout out to you. Mike sent in an article on Facebook regarding, and a video actually, showing a report about a one-man fire station. And it's been a while since I've watched it. I believe it's in a small town in Florida. Is that right, guys? You remember?
I forget where the town was. Yeah. It was a fairly small town.
Yeah, and it was like this really, really nice facility at an airport. And I think it was made for several people to live in and operate. And there's just one person.
Right. Sorry, my dog is...
Oh, no problem.
Trying to take over the show right now. I apologize about that. Hold on, I'll take care of him.
No. Don't do that. Yeah.
Say hi to Miles. Hi, Miles.
Oh. Hi, Miles.
All right.
Miles is a great dog.
He's a crazy dog.
Yeah.
Gosh. He was the one who was barking up a storm in the other room, so I thought I'd bring him in here, and now he's just hamstring me.
He wants to be on the show too. Can you blame him?
He really does.
He's part of the community.
Sorry about that.
So yeah, and going back to the fire station article in the video, basically they're talking about, there's an interview. It's a local TV station. They're interviewing the guy going, "Hey, what's up with this? We spent a lot of money on this and there's only one person." And he goes, "Well, actually, all it really takes to man this very sophisticated fire engine on the airport, it only takes one person to operate everything." Although I think he kind of indicated that he would really appreciate having more people there to help out and keep him company.
Some help would be nice.
Yeah, but
trying to play volleyball, that's kind of hard.
Yes, but he also mentioned in the article or in the story that there's an agreement with the local fire department to help them out in certain situations and everything else. So anyways, pretty good story. Check it out. We'll put a link to it in the show notes so you can watch it as well. Let's see. Got some first feedback from Luke in Australia. He said, "Hey, Jeff, Rick, Dr. Steph, I'm Luke. I'm 15 years old and live in Tasmania, Australia. I've been listening to your great show for quite a while now, but have not taken the opportunity to send in any feedback, so I thought that I would give it a shot and add to your ever-increasing mountain of it." Well, welcome, Luke.
Thank you.
Late last year, my grandfather organized a surprise for me. The surprise was for me to go and have a sit in the cockpit of a Cirrus SR-22 at our local airport. At this stage, I'd never flown in a general aviation aircraft in my life, but just had a general interest in aviation. That day, I was bitten by, quote, the aviation bug. Seeing how interested I was, the owner took me and my grandfather up for a 25-minute flight. On leveling off at 1,500 feet, he handed me the controls, and I was hooked. That was when I started looking for aviation podcasts and found yours. Well, we're glad you did, Luke.
Absolutely.
Listening to your show is a great motivational tool for me, and in April this year, it inspired me to take the plunge and book a trial instructional flight with a local flight school. The school is operated under the rules of Recreational Aviation Australia, an organization that caters for all types of recreational flying here in Australia. 7 months and 11.5 hours of dual instruction later, my instructor sent me a solo in a Fox Bat A22LS LSA on the 14th of November. What a feeling. At only 15, I am the youngest age anyone can solo an aircraft and can now fly before I drive. So here's some applause. Congratulations on your first solo, Luke. I was wondering if you, Rick, and Dr. Steph could recall your first solos, and I think we have in earlier episodes. You might want to look through some of the other shows regarding our thoughts on our first solo rides. And he said, "I'll never forget mine. I plan on sitting my exams over this Christmas break and going on to gain my recreational certificate before I leave high school." Wow, that's great. I know you probably won't get to this for a while. I just want to thank you for your role. The role you all played in getting me to where I am now. Your show is a motivational tool like no other. Keep up the great podcasts and keep the blue side up.
Man, congratulations.
That's what it's all about.
Oh, absolutely. That makes us feel so good. And, you'll see that it's not too far in the distant future. Where if this is what you want to do, you will be an airline captain. And it's just great. It's a great way to make a living. And it's a great passion to have. And it's great that you're able to share it with us in the community. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So keep on flying and keep us advised as to what your journey is like. Scott Shields writes in, I'm skipping one of those there. I have a question about airline pilots and state income taxes. Ooh, this must be from the IRS. We should skip this one.
We can neither confirm nor not.
No, I have no idea what you're talking about. It wasn't me. Going back to the feedback, do pilots have to file a state income tax return for any state that they fly into? Oh my God, I hope not. Or do they just have to do the state return for the state that they're based out of? I was wondering because it seems like since they are working in more than one state and thus earning income in that state, that they should be paying taxes in those states. Okay, Scott, we don't want to hear anything else from you ever again. We don't like the way you're thinking here. Now, I think that this has happened.
Seems that way, but fortunately, that's not the case.
No. I think that, haven't they talked about sports people, people that play professional
like
sports?
Professional basketball and football players, you're playing in a different town, in a different state, every week.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't you pay taxes?
And musicians that are, like traveling and doing, concerts in different venues in different states and, getting, for the states to tap into some of that income. Fortunately, I'm not sure as regarding those two groups of people, but as far as airline pilots or pilots in general, no, that they have not come to that. Great idea, Scott. It's based on where you are resident or where you do at least 50% of your flying, I guess. Maybe it's not exactly your residence, but where you're doing your flying. I don't know, Rick, do you have, maybe it's different for you because you do a lot of flying out of country even?
Yeah, what I do, and I have a great tax attorney and CPA. So basically what I do is when I leave on my trips overseas, I take a copy of the General Declaration, which basically is a document saying that I left the country. So I'll take one for the flight out, and then I'll take another one for the flight in. And then when it comes time to submit my taxes, which I'll do next month, I'll basically clip all the receipts for the time period between me leaving the country and coming back into the country. And since those expenses happened overseas as part of my trip, I pay no taxes on those. So that, as far as, per diem is concerned and all that stuff. And then as far as my actual compensation by my company as an airline pilot, it's all based out of the state of Florida. So I pay taxes in Florida, just like any other person would. So that's how it works for me. But I mean, my tax guy is the best, hands down.
So I can answer a little bit about this too, because I live and work in different states. But basically, wherever you live, if you live in a state that has an income tax, then that state is where all of your income tax goes. However, if you work in another state, you do have to file generally a non-resident return, but then you don't get double tax because you claim the credit back for those taxes paid to the other state, if I remember right.
Okay. Excellent.
Man, tax law is, you can just get lost in tax law.
It's ridiculous. It really is.
It's a bane.
You know what? I do think it's good though. I read something a couple of weeks ago, or maybe last week, where the State Department's going to start denying passports to people that have outstanding tax debt, which I think it's good. Pay your taxes, people. Chip in. So
okay. Let me write this down.
Chip in.
I need to pay my taxes.
If you want. Well, you don't use your passport much, anyways.
I got to renew mine.
I use it every time I go through a known crew member. I don't have to use it for that, but I'm required to carry my passport because you never know where you may end up. So my employer requires us to have them, regardless of whether you're international or domestic. But by the way, my category does fly to countries that are not the United States of America. So I try to avoid them because for me, making a little dalliance outside of the U.S. and then coming back in is just not worth the aggravation of waiting in line and customs and all that. It's just not worth it.
Totally get you.
At all.
Absolutely.
Okay, now if you're going somewhere for like a long time, then it's worth it. All right. Good question, Scott. I believe Scott has his own financial podcast, if I'm not mistaken, but he's very modest, doesn't say anything about it in his feedback. Let's see. I have a Supersonic private jet. Robert here has a movie. So let me see. I'm going to turn on the echo button.
Nice.
See what happens. Okay, I'm going to have to read it. In partnership with Airbus, Ariane has secured its first customer for the AS2 Supersonic business jet. FlexJet announced it has placed an order for 20 planes. The AS2 is on the market in June, will be on the market for a cost of $120 million per plane. It's designed to carry 8 to 12 passengers at a top speed of Mach 1.5. New York to London in 4 hours and 24 minutes. Subsonic flights on that route currently take around 7 hours. And initial test flights are expected in 2021, followed by delivery to FlexJet in 2023. So that was the little movie that was sent by Robert. Thank you, sir. It would have been nice if they had done some voiceover on that, but it was cool music.
It's a cool video. Yeah,
it is very.
Yeah, and your voiceover was nice too.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't really expecting to do that, but anyway, it looks like a 727 Supersonic 727 business jet. It has 3 intakes for the jet engines. Pretty cool.
A 3-holer.
That is significant though, because companies have actually put some money down now and say, hey, yeah, we want this and we want you to make it. And partnering with Airbus, Ariane looks like it's going to seriously do something and make one of these things or several of these things. So that's pretty cool. We'll be watching that as time goes on, and hopefully something will actually be available in 2023. Yes?
No, I was going to say gas is cheap. Make it happen.
Yeah. Now,
There
maybe
you go.
not in 2023, but we'll see. Yeah, it's kind of like, where's my crystal ball? I don't know where I put it. I can't
Does it have
find
the
it.
answers?
Yeah,
Can you
I
tell us the
mean,
future?
yeah, I can tell you what the gas is going to be in 2023, but I can't find it right offhand, so you'll just have to wait for a future episode, which I believe, hang on, is coming in the future. All right, David Verch, writes, I was listening to 195, and the Wikipedia mentioned the Frisbee fairing on the L-1011. Looks like it was named after Lloyd Frisbee of Lockheed Martin. It's really too bad that everything devolves into a duopoly. It would be nice if we had Lockheed and others as independent companies building airliners, although it looks like Mitsubishi and Bombardier are putting forth viable candidates. And then he has a couple links to the TWA's TriStars and a link to something else. I'm not sure what that is, but
I couldn't get the other one to open, so I don't know
really?
what that one was.
Here, let me see if I can get it to open up. And it's a book. You have either reached a page that is unavailable for viewing or reached your viewing limit for this book.
Yeah, it wouldn't let me read any of the book.
The book was Lockheed, the people behind the story. So, has something to do
Man,
with
I
Lloyd
tell you, I
Frisbee.
wish I'd flown that L-1011.
Yeah, a
Man.
great airplane. I'm glad I had a chance to do so. And I hope that I'll have a chance. I think I will. Rick says I will have a chance to fly that 757 before they put it in the scrap heap.
Oh, that 75 and 76 are going to be around for a while.
By the way, my company, basically said such, that they were planning on retiring a bunch of them. And then they said, oop, never mind. Well, we're going to keep them around for a little bit longer. So anyway.
You're going to love them.
Dispatch Gregg sent in an article regarding a new book. And I don't want to look at this advertisement for 12 seconds. Shoot.
Yes, you do.
Yes, I do. I love...
The advertisers know that you do.
Yes. Thank you, SAS, for your ad. Do appreciate that. Anyway, it's the title of the book is Texting in the Cockpit. And it is by someone, Gregg Ip is a journalist for the Wall Street Journal and author of Foolproof: Why Safety Can Be Dangerous and How Danger Makes Us Safe. Anyway, so I have not read the book myself, but I think there's a little short excerpt of it on theatlantic.com, the magazine, the website for the Atlantic magazine. And if you would like to read it, look for the link in the show notes. And whatever this website page is doing, it's making my computer fan go nuts. And let's see.
Well, it has.
My
the
goodness.
excerpt that they had was from the Aviation Safety Reporting System.
Oh, was
so
it?
I think there was some stuff related to that in the book.
Well, we have the honor of being joined by a very distinguished-looking gentleman. I assume that this is what it looks like when you're flying your Airbus 340 across the Atlantic?
Well, of course, Jeff. Don't we all dress like this? For
Yes.
heaven's sakes.
So
That's
this
the least
is
we can do to please the passengers.
Captain.
You're looking snappy, Captain Nick.
Captain Nick Anderson joins us, and
Well,
he's
thank you very
wearing
much.
a
It's been a very
tuxedo.
pleasant evening. I'm dreadfully sorry for being late. But as I'm sure you realize, I support a charity for, in this case, a hospice, local hospice, the Rosemary Foundation. And I always try and attend their dinners. We pay a little bit of extra money in order to help fund them. So it's a good cause. And I'm had my tickets for some time. So I'm very sorry for being late. I would never normally have come up with an excuse, but I think that's a fair one.
Oh, that was a very fair excuse. And we applaud your charitable and philanthropic efforts. And welcome to the show.
I hope I haven't missed too much.
Well, you only missed about an hour and a half.
Not really.
Yeah. And but we're so happy that you were able to make it. And I know it's late over there in England. How late is it?
I don't know. It's about 3 pints of London Pride and a bottle of Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh.
Oh, I'm familiar with that time.
Well, I'm way behind your time zone then.
Yeah, I'm a bit behind.
And now I've got a proper job here just to finish the evening off.
Well,
as the Australians would say, a palate cleansing ale. So nice. I do apologize before I make any ruderies to the APG listeners. Guys, I'm sitting here at the end of the evening, not the beginning.
I see. You're well lubricated, I see. Okay. All right.
That's right.
I'm gathering.
I'm well greased up.
That's wonderful. This is going to be fun. Okay. Well, yeah, we've talked a little bit about the news. We're especially the AirAsia 8501 report, basically proving once again that pilots of the Airbus aircraft are incompetent, basically. And
well,
let's see.
French trained ones, might I point out.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
I hope we made that point.
Wanted to get your goat. Yes. Well, the point was made that the co-pilot was a French citizen with relatively not a lot of experience. And we remarked at the astonishing fact that a full 9 seconds commenced before anybody in the cockpit made any effort at all to right the airplane or recover from an unusual attitude, and which was pretty sad.
Well, I mean, I just don't understand. I've read the report and I've listened to all the comments, and I'm thinking, well, I've sat beside a bloke who's been taking crew rest recovery. I don't know what you guys call it. Jeff, you wouldn't do this in your little airplanes, but I'm sure Miami Rick's familiar with it. 2 guys, perfectly legally. One of you says, right, it's I'm unsafe now. I need to shut my eyes for a bit. And while she's taking a little snooze in the seat, the other guy is fully prepared to control the airplane, but he might nudge the stick. I've even had it somebody turning around and kick the autopilot out. Now, for whatever reason, an autopilot drops out. I find it impossible. I really do find it impossible to understand how you would then subsequently lose control of an airplane. It's just so mind-numbingly stupid that it just defies description. So, you know, how do you do that? How do you cope with someone who is so inept that they can't fly an airplane when the autopilot, you know, unexpectedly drops out?
I don't know.
What can I say? What can I say?
That was our question.
Exactly right. You know, and granted, I mean, the fact that the flight occupation computers went offline there, basically, you know, I don't know the intricacies of the Airbus, but I understand that leaves you without a lot of the protections, you know, flight envelope protections. And so I guess you can get to the point where you would let the aircraft depart controlled flight because you don't have those protections there to, well, you know, pardon the protection once again, you know, the word, but you're just basically there to protect you. So, but then to let 9 seconds elapse before you are even aware of anything going on, as Captain Nick said, I just don't understand it. I can't wrap my head around that.
Protections are there to stop gross handling errors, really, in my mind. That's the way I think of them. So I've suddenly lost sense and really am so disorientated that I'm now trying to do something with the airplane that is ludicrous. But any pilot worth his salt is never going to get near the level required for a protection to come in. I don't understand how people can let an airplane get to an angle of bank, an angle of pitch, a speed regime, a stall regime that requires a protection to assist them. That, first of all, means they had a major failing of their flying skills just to get to that point. And once the protections are in, it will prevent them from killing themselves. But if the protections aren't there, I mean, for a start, they should never have got to that stage. Number two, they should never allow it to progress to that point. So there's something hugely wrong with their training regime.
Well, training and practicing skills, when they can. We're in this vicious cycle I see right now where automation is getting better and better and better. And because of that, we're relying upon it more and more and more. And because we're relying on it so much more, we're not practicing our skills anymore. It's just I don't know what to do to
it is a vicious circle, but you don't rely on a protection, because if you've got to an angle of bank so great that the protection needs to come in, then you've already lost control of the airplane. You've already done something. You've already got yourself into a jet upset. The pilot should be taking control and controlling a situation so far before that point that it just shows complete ineptitude. And if I put a passenger in an airplane rather than a trained pilot, I would expect them perhaps to do a better job. And that's what completely worries me. Where was the level of training for these guys? Where was the level of checking? What were these airlines, perhaps not being too specific, what was this airline doing employing people with such poor skills?
Hey, they have a certificate, Captain Nick, that says that they're qualified to do the job.
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Well, that's a big worry.
I think it's, the perspective is, it should be, and it's my perspective, and I'm sure all of us on this panel and everybody listening to this show, I hope, that automation is a wonderful thing, and it really helps with our workload, etc. But it's a tool that is there to work for us. We're not there. You know what I mean? That's what you have to look. You have to look at automation as a tool in our toolbox, a great tool, but it is always subservient to the human pilots on board, and we have
exactly right. And well, you and I, Jeff, a couple of days ago, we were having a back and forth about the fact that yes, automation is there to help us, but on the other side, on I guess the managerial side of the operation, you're expected to use it, because if you don't use it, then if you exceed certain parameters, then the statistics for the safety statistics for your fleet basically now have a ding in them, and that would, and a few of those, if you combine a couple of those, that would bring the safety statistic of the airline down, and then that could, translate into perhaps an economic loss as far as stock price for the airline itself. So it all goes down to, the economics of the thing. And so you're expected to use this automation all the way down to, from, basically takeoff all the way down to minimums, if not Autoland. And so if you're expected to do it, then it's going to come to the point where you don't want to put yourself in a position where if you do fly manually and you try to practice your skills and you exceed a certain parameter, you don't want to be the one that gets a call from the flight ops department saying, what happened here? And so it is a vicious cycle. I mean, you're expected to use automation by the company. You want to basically not go through the trouble of having to deal with ops, giving you a call. And so then when are you supposed to practice your manual skills? Every 6 months when you go to the simulator? And that's not good enough. So where does the vicious cycle stop?
I don't know.
That's a good question.
Well, hopefully we'll figure out a way to fix all this in the future. And I know that many of the regulatory agencies are looking very, very seriously at fixing this. And I look forward to the day where we won't read any more accident reports such as Air France 447 or AirAsia 8501. Skipping on to a more upbeat note, received this email from Danish, or Chocolate Danish. We haven't heard from Danish in a while. He said, "Hey, Captain Jeff, had the pleasure of meeting one of my heroes today. He is a former Air Force fighter pilot and a Canadian astronaut. He is one of the most humble people I've ever met and gave me some great advice about flying. He's, of course, talking about Chris Hadfield. He said, it was only a couple of words, but that was all I needed. He said, "Fly well, my friend." And also said, being an astronaut is 99.9% technical. It doesn't matter what you fly. Fly and focus on that. If anyone wants to read an amazing book, I highly recommend his book. It includes a lot of aviation stuff. It's called An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth by Commander Chris Hadfield. It was an amazing feeling meeting him. Anyway, thanks for your podcast. Have a good day. And he sent a picture, which I'll include in the show notes, of him shaking the hand of Commander Chris Hadfield, astronaut Chris Hadfield from Canada. I think he's a musician too. Isn't he the guy that plays the guitar and sings? I don't know. No? Oh. Really? Okay.
I don't
know.
All right. Well, I'm going to do a search. So you guys talk amongst yourselves while I...
Well, I'm just wondering where this, looks like he met him at a Home Depot.
Yeah, it does look like a Home Depot.
Yeah, it looks like a Home Depot or a Lowe's or one of those. And apparently whatever's behind him costs $43,000 or $43.99.
What, you can pick up astronauts at the Home Depot?
Apparently. And let's see here. Would you like to... here, I'm going to turn on the echo switch, so beware. It's a YouTube video. This is Chris Hadfield, Beyond the Terra, from the album Space Sessions, Songs from a Tin Can.
Well, there you go.
And guess what? It looks just like that guy in the photo with Danish. It's pretty good, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm not losing my mind completely
Sounds
yet.
a bit David Bowie to me.
Yeah.
A little bit.
So,
Nice.
so good. I'm glad that I was identifying the proper astronaut. Okay.
I'm starting to establish a connection between good voices and mustaches.
There you go. And awesome flight skills. Of course, Rick didn't go that far.
Yeah, I stop it at mustaches.
Okay. Well, thank you, Danish, for that. That's cool, and we'll have the link to his book in the show notes as well. David Shore writes, this feedback below is a joke that was typed out on a long flight to the Orient. If it's too raunchy to read on your podcast, I fully understand. It was just something funny that I thought of on the 12th hour of the flight. The 12th hour of the flight. He's losing his mind. So he goes on, I just completed a round trip from Toronto to Asia, and during these long flights, I think that I may have just come up with one of the greatest ideas in modern aviation history. Well, I might be going a little bit too far, David, but we'll continue. We've all been there on these long flights. First comes the bar service, then the meal service, then the coffee and the tea cart. Eventually, the flight attendants might come around to pick up the food trays, and before you know it, lo and behold, half of the passengers on the airplane are lined up at the rear of the aircraft, waiting to use the washroom. The primary cause of this traffic jam is due to the fact that each washroom is unisex, used by both male and female passengers. From my observations, the average male's turnaround time in the lab is less than 1 minute in duration. The average woman's time in the lavatory is between 3 to 5 minutes in length. I guess that they must be busy fixing their hair, touching up their makeup, and looking in the mirror. Well, probably more to it than that, I think. Yes, nature calls and everyone has to get to the washroom, often several times in a long flight, but these long lineups could easily be averted. Here's a brief summary of my idea. Okay, so this is what David considers one of the greatest ideas in modern aviation history. He did add that this was a joke as well. Move the food preparation galley from the rear of the airplane to the front of the airplane. Relocate the ladies' washrooms to the front of the airplane or below deck. Reconfigure the...
Hey now.
Reconfigure the individual washrooms at the rear of the airplane into one large men's-only washroom with a door that closes from behind to separate it from the rest of the passenger cabin. Install a bank of individual urinals in this washroom so that men could go about their business in an orderly and timely way, wash up, and then return to their seats. Heck, with this kind of efficiency, there would be no hesitation for men like myself to be drinking the complimentary room temperature beer that is served throughout the flight. Initially, there might be some minor problems associated with the setup, and the first potential problem that comes to mind might have to do with sudden turbulence. This has the potential to cause a bit of a mess. Fortunately, I've done some research and have found a practical solution. I would suggest that between each urinal, a Rubbermaid 328 polyvinyl heavy-duty vertical splash guard be installed. Well, he's done some research on this. That would compensate. That would compensate for any horizontal swaying of the aircraft. And the beauty of this idea is that these washrooms could be open anytime after takeoff until 90 seconds before landing, since men could easily compensate for any sudden turns or altitude changes. 15 degrees turn to the left? Well, go right ahead, Captain, as we can make an immediate adjustment. Wake turbulence? No problem, since a little bump or shake is part of our standard operating procedure.
Very good.
I would be pleased. I'm glad that you are here for this, Captain Nick. I would be pleased to hear and comments that you and your partners have concerning this matter. Thanks. Again, this is David Shore. And, actually, I don't know if it's one of the greatest ideas in modern aviation history, but it's a reasonably good idea, David. How about?
I think the ILS is now number 2 to this.
Oh, I get it.
In my personal opinion.
Did you mean to say number 2?
Yes, I did.
Unintended.
No, numbers on the airplane. I'm sorry.
It's the person who's taking the longest in the lab is always the person who's right in front of you waiting for it. It doesn't matter if male or female. It's just the person right.
I can assure you one thing: the pilots at the top of the descent are the quickest guys to get in and out of there than anyone on the airplane. So just give us 15 seconds. That's probably all we need.
And that includes washing up as well, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
That's why we have those antiseptic wipes up in the cockpit, right?
Yeah, that's right. And that's why I always give the stick and throttle a good wipe with those biological wipes after I take over.
You never know. After you take over.
No kidding.
I sit in the seat, the first thing I do is wipe those things down.
Oh, okay.
I know what the guy before has been doing.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm hoping you clean up after yourself as well.
I do my best, but for an old man, it's always hard.
Yes. Well, that's
what she said.
Okay. Let's move on with some more feedback, and I think, this is going to be good.
Hey, Captain Jeff, Dr. Steph, Miami Rick. This is Tom from Columbia, Missouri. Thought I would check in with a little bit of voice feedback. I haven't done voice feedback in quite some time. And I had a couple of things I wanted to cover, so I thought it would be easier to do it via voice. The first thing I want to say is I want to let you all in on a little secret about old Dot Curmudgeon or old Dot Pilot. As you all know, I got to have a little meetup with him in Kansas City a few weeks ago, and he probably wouldn't want me to say this, but he really isn't an old curmudgeon. He is a wonderful, jolly guy, and we had a great time getting together and talking about aviation and me kind of asking him about his experiences. And I would highly, highly recommend, if you have interest in aviation, in listening to the Omega Tau podcast that was done with old Dot Pilot a while back, where he talked about flying F-4 Phantoms, and he specifically spent time talking about intercepting Russian bombers back during the Cold War. That was a wonderful podcast to listen to, and he shared a lot of great stories and a lot of great information about what he used to do. So that's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to talk about was I was listening to APG 194, and I believe it was Micah that was asking the question about where do people listen to the APG show? What are some of the craziest places people have listened to it? So to get to that point, I'll tell you a little tale. But over the past year, I have had 3 spine surgeries, and this kind of gets into some Dr. Steph territory. But before those spine surgeries, I had dozens of diagnostic injections in different parts of my spine, trying to isolate pain and trying to get things fixed through injections. And I know that Dr. Steph does that, so she understands all that. I don't even know if I understand all that yet, but went through a whole bunch of those injections until we finally got to the point where surgery was what was needed. So So 3 different spine surgeries, and I'm a very nervous patient when it comes to surgery, especially when they cut into your spine. So I would actually listen to the APG show in the preparation room getting ready for surgery. And there's something to be said for your calming voice, Captain Jeff, but also just to be lost in thought about what you guys were talking about, and picturing in my head what you were discussing, and it just it was a very calming effect and prepared me well to go into my surgeries. And I was able to hang on to my phone and my earbuds all the way into the operating room, right up until the time they put the mask on me and put me out. So I did that all 3 times, and it was very helpful for me. So that leads into my final point. One of my surgeries was actually, we inserted, the surgeon implanted a neurostimulator in my spine. Again, Dr. Steph, you probably know what that is, but kind of a crude explanation. Basically, it is wiring. These wires are kind of hardwired into my nerve track inside my spinal column. And these wires are kind of, they're hardwired right into my nerves. And basically it intercepts the pain, and it basically helps cover the pain from these nerves that are badly pinched. And so it's a way to cover up the pain. That leads to a control unit that is inserted and kind of stitched in under my skin in my right lower part of my back. And that control unit is not visible at all when you look at my back. It's actually implanted under the skin, but it contains, the control unit contains a computer chip and also a lithium-ion battery. The battery is good for 25 years, and through my skin and actually through clothing, I can charge the battery with this device that I have, and I can also reprogram it through another device. So that's all done externally with these paddles that kind of go up against it. But anyway, that lithium-ion battery, as long as 25 years will get changed out if I'm still using the device at that point. But Miami Rick, every time you talk about lithium-ion batteries on board your airplane and the hazards that those things are, it really makes me, I don't know, it kind of makes me feel a little like, oh boy, what can go wrong? Now, I've been assured by my surgeon that, nothing's ever happened, nothing's ever gone wrong. Although if you read the fine print in the manuals that came with this thing, there's always a chance something could go wrong. So every time you talk about these lithium-ion fires and these, the battery problems, it kind of makes me wonder. And one of the things, the first time I charged the battery after getting this thing implanted, it even says in the manual, it says you might feel some heat from the control unit, from the battery as it's being charged. And of course, your mind thinks all these horrible things, and so I was certain that it was heating up, but after the first time, I've never felt it again. So I really think it was all in my mind. So anyway, I bring all that back to the lithium-ion batteries that you guys talk about a lot. And anyway, maybe you could not talk about those so much, Miami Rick, and it might help me feel a little more at ease with the one I have on board myself. Anyway, that's it. I just thought I'd catch up a little bit with what's going on out here in Missouri. And again, thanks for a great show. I really appreciate all the information you guys feed out to us here. And us aviation geeks really appreciate it. Have a great holiday season, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, so let me tell you about these lithium-ion batteries. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, no.
Well, this was interesting feedback for me. I mean, I don't do spinal cord stimulators, but I did go back and try and read up a little bit about the lithium-ion batteries that they're using for them. And it's really hard to find information on them, to be honest. I was really trying to find some of the research on it and the technical information. A lot of the information that I was able to find comes from the companies that manufacture them themselves. So it doesn't get into a lot of the negatives or downsides potentially. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. The only thing I was really able to find was that they had done some testing to different lithium-ion batteries that after 1,000 cycles, they were still able to retain, I guess, or capacity retention using 80% depth of discharge condition was 98%. So these are apparently very highly regulated, well-developed lithium-ion batteries, but I've not ever encountered or met anyone.
Made by a decent manufacturer, I think, Steph. The trick is that a lot of the problems we've been having are through cheap Chinese. Should I change Chinese? Anyone can copy a decent amount of technology, but without the controls within the battery to restrict the flow of electricity, then they have a chance for a thermal runaway. And I think if he's had one fitted to his spine, chances are it's going to be top quality and it's going to be.
And I'm sure they're FDA approved and regulated, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. As Captain Nick said, I mean, as long as these are, the real medical thing grade. and they're handled, and I'm talking also about, the kinds that we carry on board, as long as these are handled the way they're supposed to be handled and kept in the temperature that they're supposed to be kept, and and they're palletized the right way, and everything, and all the boxes are checked, and there should be no problem. So.
Yeah, and might I just add what a wonderful guy Tom is. He showed me all his scars, and they are remarkable. And he's a very brave guy to have undergone that surgery. I realized that he suffered from terrible affliction for a long number of years, and he suffers it with great. He's very relaxed about it. He's a very humorous guy, and he's very cool. So it was a pleasure meeting him. And you really wouldn't know he'd had so many problems if he didn't tell you. So it was a very pleasant evening I had with him. And apart from the fact that my heart is now encased in a solid inch of fat, I really enjoyed the barbecue.
Well, he thinks you're quite the jolly fellow, and that's nice.
Not true.
Yeah.
It's not true.
And by the way, he also mentioned Marcus Volter and his wonderful podcast, Omega Tau. Let's play a little bit of that.
This is Omega Tau, science and engineering in your headphones. Detailed conversations with people who know something. Visit omegataupodcast.net for all previous episodes, contact to the team, and general information about the show.
That's what a professional podcast sounds like.
Just
awesome.
like yours.
No, very unlike mine. And we'll put a link to the episode 172, probably the best one out there, Chasing Bears with the Phantom. We're with our.
I tell you, you know what? It's true. I always go back and listen to that episode, and every time I listen through that episode again, there's a part of a story that comes alive, and I pick up something that I hadn't picked up the time before. It's just a fantastic episode, and it's a classic in my, I think it's a classic, personally speaking.
I just go back, and all I do is listen to the technical errors I made.
Then don't listen to it anymore.
In describing the differences between the A, B, and C scope that the Phantom had, and I'm going, hang on a minute, I got that wrong. Oh no!
If I dwelled on all the things that I've said that were wrong over the past almost 200 episodes, I'd never be able to sleep. So don't worry about it.
That's very kind, Jeff.
So anyway, moving on. Thank you again, Tom, for that great audio feedback. It's always good to hear your voice. An Av geek in the left seat flying the Boeing 727. This was sent in by well, did I not write this? Oh, no, shoot. Help me. It looks like Nick Acosta. You heard of that guy in Miami? He sent a link to this. And anywho, it is an article regarding the last flight of the first Boeing 727, and one of the pilots on the flight is going to be this guy named Captain Tim Powell. Not only does he currently fly the 727, but also set to be one of the pilots who will fly the final flight of the 722. Did I already talk about this one? I don't know. It's like having a deja vu moment. Okay, good. Anyway, I'm thinking, and I'm going to put a link to this article in the show notes that Nick sent us. And he said, hey, you should, interview this guy, have him on the show or whatever. So that is a great idea, Nick. So hopefully we'll remember to pursue that. I'm sure that he would love to join us. And he's flown for many, many different airlines, including most of his career with Acme Airlines. So it'd be nice to get his perspective on this whole project. So another great pilot, another great airplane. So thanks, Nick, for sending that in. And moving on, we'll look at a question from our friend Stuart Aslett in the UK. A quick question for you regarding the course knob on the mode control panel, the MCP. Now, I have no formal education in the role of a pilot, but I've many hours on the sim as a hobby pilot. Unlike the heading knob, the course knob appears to have no obvious function. However, by the very fact it exists, I'm guessing it does indeed have a function. I'm loosely led to believe, from what I've Googled so far, that it is somehow related to the ILS procedures, and that the course input on the MCP should match the final published course of the runway heading. Well, I've decided it's time to bounce this question over to the experts, the wonderful APG presenters. Thanks for the great show, and thanks in advance for helping me out with this question. Well, better late than never, right, Stuart? He sent this in on the 24th. That wasn't that long ago, I guess. It's pretty good, actually.
No.
Yeah.
So who wants to tackle the mode control panel and the course knob?
I guess I'll do it because he's flying a Boeing type simulator. So Stuart flies a 737 NG type simulator, and in the 737 next generation, the mode control panel is very similar to that on the newer 75767s and 777s type aircraft, with the difference that 737 has, as he said, a cores knob up there on the mode control panel. And that goes in hand with a lateral mode that only the 737 NGs now have, and that is the Vorlock mode, VOR-LOC mode. And the 737 NG is the last airplane in the Boeing lineup that is able to track an actual VOR course to or radial from a station. If you want to do that in a 775, 76, 777 type airplane, you actually have to go down to your control display unit, the FMC pilot interface, and designate what station you want to fly to, and then from that station what radial to fly out from that station, or what course to fly towards that station. So actually manually build that course to or radial from that station and track it using the lateral navigation button or function of the autopilot, which, as I said, the 737 doesn't use. So basically your course knob is there to set your course on what's called the CDI, and the CDI stands for course deviation indicator, which is basically going to tell you what course towards or radial from a station you're flying. And also that's on the VOR mode. And if you're flying an ILS, that's where you set your final course to, or the front course to the runway, and track the localizer laterally that way with the lock function of that VOR LOC lateral mode. And as I said, only the 737 has that. And I know there's a couple of 737 drivers out there. Danish is one of them. Jeff Hellmuth is another one. A bunch of them. And I'm sure that they're going to chime in with more detailed feedback than I've just given here. But it's basically a 737 only mode.
Well, all the airplanes I've flown have course knobs. and course selector knobs, and they, in fact, do have everything to do with not only the ILS system, but back in the old days before area navigation, RNAV, we actually used ground-based navigational aids called VORs. And when we were flying the jet routes and the Victor routes, we were dialing in courses outbound to the station and inbound to the next. And you had to make those adjustments with the course select knob. And now, even today, in the airplane that I fly, I know it's kind of an older technology airplane, when we dial up an ILS, we definitely have to set it. Well, you don't have to set in the proper course in the course select window and match it up. However, it could be a little bit disorienting because if you're centered on the ILS, it'll stay centered in no matter what you have in your course select knob, but it's going to really make your head hurt because, you could have it 90 degrees from,
That is true. Every course is, the last Captain Jeff setting out there's like no matter where you set your CDI on an ILS, every course is a front course. So it's going to be kind of hard to kind of put yourself spatially over that CDI and trying to figure out which way to make that correction towards. So, but that's why you want to have it in the front course.
Exactly. It's very important to have it in the front course setting. And then that reminds me of something. I just went through recurrent training at my airline, and one of the segments of our simulator was on the first day was to perform a flight using non-RNAV or non-FMS procedures. And those of us old codgers who grew up in those days before all this fancy navigation system stuff that we have, you, Captain Nick, me, Dr. Steph is probably familiar with it because I'm sure that a lot of the airplanes that you're flying have, you have to set in. And I don't know, Rick, how much exposure did you have to actually navigating without RNAV, or have you had that experience?
Oh, absolutely. I remember when I first started flying the 7.6, I had this one instructor pilot that you would own. And for example, we had a flight that was from Quito to Guayaquil. So it was only a half an hour long flight. And the highest we ever went was 23 or 25,000 feet. So we were out of our VSM airspace. And this guy used to make me fly the whole thing manual and using basically just VORs, And I remember out of the old Quito airport, there was this procedure where you would take off to the north, and you actually had to do this 6 DME arc around this facility to the north of the airport to get around this mountain. So you had to do a manual DME arc around this facility. So doing that manually with just basically your RMI, your radiomagnetic indicator, just putting that needle at 90 degrees to you, and and correcting for the wind and making sure that you keep that needle there. And I remember he used to tell me, okay, so you get 0.2 miles up and 0.2 miles down. That is all you get. If you get past 6.2 or under 5.8, then you fail the check rate.
Whoa!
So you really had to be, you really had to be on your game there.
And on a 6 DME arc, that's got to be like pretty much a constant bank of like 15, 20 degrees
absolutely.
Or something. Yeah.
And depending on your ground speed and all that
yeah.
stuff. So you basically never rolled out of it because the kind of the trick behind that is putting that needle at 90 degrees to you, keeping in mind where the wind's coming from, and just keeping that needle facing the station the entire way. And if you start getting away from the station a little bit, then you correct into the station slightly, and then wait for that correction to take effect and see if that correction took care of the problem. And if you overcorrect, obviously you want to go the other way, but always keeping that needle at 90 degrees to you to make sure that you keep tracing that circle around that station. So it's really, really interesting flying. And on top of that, you got to keep track of your climb rate. You got to keep track of your speed to clean the airplane up. You got to keep track of your clearance altitude because you don't want to bust through your clearance altitude. It was very, very engaging, interesting flying, and I had just transferred over from flying GA at that point, so general aviation. So I've done some basic instrument flying. Really
instrument cross check.
There you go.
And apparently it's enough of a concern by the training department in my airline that we start doing that occasionally, because we're allowed to legally fly that way if for some reason our RNAV system is not working properly. But apparently some of our pilots have been turning airplanes down if the RNAV or the FMS wasn't working, and our company is saying, oh, no, you can still operate that flight. We better give you, shake the cobwebs out of your head so you remember how to do this. The hardest thing for me, incidentally, was getting used to the fact that, we used to use the paper charts, and now we have the electronic flight bags, the tablets. Finding all the information on the Victor routes and the jet routes on this electronic tablet is kind of interesting. It's different from what, just pulling out and unfolding a chart. So it was good. It was a good training, good experience.
I'll tell you what was interesting. In the military, we used to fly DME arcs because quite often the air defense missile systems on the airfield you were trying to land at would activate if you weren't coming in on a very specific path. And they were frequently DME arcs. So if you've strayed a mile outside the DME arc, they would engage you. Mm-hmm. So it actually concentrated the mind a little bit.
There's an argument for precision and accuracy.
Exactly right. If you thought you were going to be shot down, particularly by your own side, if your instrument flying wasn't very good.
Very precise instrument cross-check in that situation. Well, let's move on with some audio feedback, and here we go.
Hello, Captain Jeff, Dr. Steph from Miami Rick. It's Captain Al here. Hot foot on old farts feedback on episode 195 about ATISes, or should that be ATIS-I? Either way, I'm in entire agreement. My own airline has an SOP that requires both pilots who are at the controls to be monitoring VHF-1 during the climb and descent phase. A very important and relevant SOP, as these are the areas most likely to incur a level bust, especially the descent phase, as it tends to happen towards the end of a long flight or a series of flights towards the end of a day, where fatigue is probably most prevalent. It seems to be that air traffic control has turned ATIS into a little bit of cat and mouse game. So at my airline we've developed what you could best describe as a game called ATIS Bingo, whereby if when checking in with approach control we have the letter that they have, we shout out on the flight deck, bingo. As it so happens, it doesn't tend to happen that often because the air traffic control people, for reasons that may well be set in stone or just for a little bit of bravado, change the letter seemingly far too frequently. Recently, I've questioned as to why it's necessary to update the ATIS on such a informal and regular basis, especially as it's something that's relatively trivial, like maybe a 1 degree change in the dew point. Seemingly in the UK it's a requirement. I don't know if that's the same in the United States, Jeff and Rick, although I am minded of a little conversation I had with Miami Approach a few years ago, where they said to me, verify that you have information, Mike. And I said, no, I've got November. And that seemed to upset the apple cart entirely. So what actually happens in the United States if when presented with a question, verify that you have information, Mike, you say, no, tell me all about it. I've got Lima. Does that cause to write some reports from air traffic control, or will they happily tell you what the difference between Lima and Mike is? Typically in the UK, they will appraise you of the significant changes if the ATIS has changed from the one you have to the one that they have. Anyway, I entirely agree with old Fart with regards to the relevant information not being contained within the ATIS. If air traffic control are considering changing runways, then it would be useful to say this on the ATIS. Quite frankly, there's a lot of trivia and if-naff in the ATIS, but pertinent information is always valuable. Thanks very much, guys. Take care.
What do you have to say about that old Fart?
I don't know. Is he here?
Yeah, I think he is.
I can't see him anywhere. Oh, that's absolutely right. Bloody ATIS. It's a pain in the ass. And our airplane has a great system, whereas every new ATIS, if you select it, auto update, will automatically print out But during the average approach, it means we're like tearing off sheets of paper and reading out the ATIS like it's toilet paper, and you're suffering from a bad case of the runs. So, yeah, it would be really nice if they only change the ATIS on significant changes. In the UK, it happens every half an hour, sort of, and more often if they feel the need, or perhaps when the air traffickers are feeling a bit bored. In the States, a little more controlled. So in that respect, I take my hat off to you gentlemen.
Whoa, you mean you have actually something positive to say about the United States?
I always have something positive to say about you. It's just that I find it a little difficult to get it out.
Choking a little bit on the words as they come out.
Sorry to put you that.
But it happened. Yes.
Yes, we got it. It's on tape. Well, not tape, but it's recorded. By the way, Captain Al, you know, and I've seen him with his email address so many times and never have bothered to look at his amazing website. And you want to see what Captain Al looks like, head over to flightfearsolutions.co.uk.
But brace yourself beforehand.
Yeah. Maybe you should drink a few bottles of something before you. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Yeah, he's a very handsome man, and he has a website called Flight Fear Solutions. He established this for the sole purpose of helping people just like you who may have some anxiety about flying. Is he talking to me?
I get that all the time, and
he's talking about
my anxiety down to a minimum. I'm very
he does great work. I told Captain Al that I was fearful of flying, and then we worked through it, and you know.
And look where you are now.
Look at you now.
Look what I am.
Right now, you've just lost your hair.
Well, that was when he still had the fear.
But yeah, as Captain Nick just mentioned, we have the same system on our aircraft, but unlike I guess his system, our system, which basically, and if you so select it, it'll show you what the current ATIS is, and it'll tell you to go down to the multifunction display and basically call up the ATIS that way. And you just basically look at it. You don't have to print it out. And as far as having the current ATIS, there's this really funny controller down here in Miami, and I've actually heard him do this a couple of times where he goes to an aircraft, he asks him, whatever, American 123, do you have mic? And then the flight will go back, yes, we do have mic. And the guy goes back, we're just kidding, only Lima's current for now. So he
just trying to catch them in the act of being like, oh yeah, no, we got it.
So he totally catches these guys,
That's funny.
Red-handed. So we always get a chuckle out of that. Good stuff.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, but in terms of, so you call up and, you have information Lima and they say, well, information Mike's now current. Typically, we just have to go ahead and get it and then come back to them. They're not going to, the only time they've ever given me updated information is if you're on final and there's been a significant wind change or something along those lines.
I actually had an experience the other day coming into Atlanta, and the guy said, the latest information is blah, and he just gave a brief synopsis of what was different about it, and or whatever. And so he didn't force us all to go and get the darn ATIS and then hit ident or tell him really nice. Wasting time on the radio. It was nice.
Jeff, was he an Englishman?
No, he wasn't. He was. I couldn't tell. Maybe he was an Englishman with a really good American accent. So maybe that was it. But anyway, he also Captain Al also sent a link to a YouTube video, and you know what? I don't think I've actually watched or listened to this, so let's hear a little bit of it.
Yeah. This is Barcelona. ATIS information mic. Recorded at 1220 UTC. Expected approach type total and utter chaos. Perfect wind. Whatever we say, it will be a tailwind. Visibility. Well, it's a lovely day, but we will still give you the RVR anyway, which is above 2,000 meters. No significant cloud. That big dark object is actually an Iberia 757. Temperature. Bloody hot. Dew point insignificant. QNH very low, but I bet you can feel the pressure rising all the time. Warning controller on the job. Training monitored, but still expect to be cut up by an air nostrum. On first contact with Barcelona, cross your fingers. Inform aircraft type and receipt of. This is Barcelona. ATIS information November. We just saw you almost finished writing, so decided to change the ATIS. I bet you wish you came here every day.
I love that.
That's good stuff.
That was good.
Oh, if only that were true.
That was brilliant.
QNH, insignificant. Or no, extremely low.
Feel the pressure rising.
The dew point was
absolutely brilliant. I don't know who put that together. Genius.
That was good. That was good. Okay.
And it really rings all too true if you're actually ever flying into Barcelona.
Yeah. You know, we still have some more audio feedback. You want to hear it?
Yeah,
of
sure.
course.
All
always.
Right. Let's hear from Ed.
Hello, Jeff, Steph, Rick, and Nick. This is Ed Steinfeld sending you some audio feedback from Massachusetts. Although, as I'll explain in a minute, I'm not in Massachusetts right now. I'm a great fan of the podcast and have been a listener since, well, the podcast's very first days. Right now, I'm actually at about 36,000 feet in a shiny 787 over the Bering Strait, somewhere north, it looks like here on the map, of Fairbanks, Alaska. I'm flying from Boston to Shanghai today. It's a flight I do pretty often, either between Boston and Shanghai or Boston and Beijing. These days, it seems like it's a pretty routine flight for a lot of people, though I remember when I first started traveling to China in the 1980s, we used to have to fly from Chicago or Detroit over to Anchorage, Alaska, and stop there, and then go over to Tokyo and on into China. But I guess all these long-haul aircraft and the opening of Russian airspace has changed all these flight times. But I had a quick question about that. We're flying up in the polar region, obviously, flying over the top, and I wanted to know whether polar aviation today and polar navigation poses any particular challenges. Do all the modern navigation systems pretty much make polar navigation easy, or is it still a little bit challenging? Of course, I'm thinking a little bit about the Korean airliner KL-007 and the problems it unfortunately faced back in, maybe 1983 or so. But anyway, it seems like such a routine thing today to fly over the pole or around the pole, and just wondering what you can tell me about that. I look forward to hearing your answer, and again, thanks for such a great podcast. It's really incredibly informative and lots of fun. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Thank you very much, Edward, for sending in the feedback. Always good to hear from members of the APG community, especially someone like you who has been listening for such a long time. We really appreciate that. And the thing that's even more interesting is that this is a smart man. He's a professor of political science, Dean's Chair in China Studies at Brown University. And that's impressive. So I'm going to sit back and listen to Miami Rick and Captain Nick talk about polar navigation.
Polar navigation.
Do carry on, Rick. I mean, yeah.
This is just made for you. Try to keep
one of you knows about it because I certainly do not.
Try not to make it too long though, because we need to wrap up the show pretty soon.
Yeah, well, we're gonna keep it simple. But basically, for not only polar navigation, but I guess long range navigation, there's two. And just off the top of my head, there's two concepts you need to understand. The first one is what's called your RNP, or required navigational performance, and as the name implies, the RNP is the type of performance that you need to be flying in a specific type of airspace. And ANP, or actual navigational performance, is what the aircraft can deliver. And so for long-range navigation, oceanic navigation, the required navigational performance is 12.6 miles. And that means that, imagine a box, if you will, that is 12.6 miles by 12.6 miles, and the aircraft is somewhere in that box. It has to be somewhere within that box. Now, the actual navigational performance of the aircraft needs to be 12.6 or less to keep you within that specific airspace. Now, nowadays, systems are so exact that even though the RNP for an oceanic or polar crossing might be 12.6 miles, but the actual navigational performance of the aircraft is only 0.05 miles. So you are in a square that is 0.05 by 0.05. That wasn't the case back then. Back then, and talking about specifically Korean 007 aircraft of that era used a system called an inertial navigation system, which was basically a set of gyro-stabilized platforms that worked by the pilot entering the initial position on the ground, and then a couple of minutes would go by until the platforms aligned, and then you basically entered the latitude and longitude positions of your flight plan into that system, and then the airplane was able to follow that. Now, the problem with these INS systems was the fact that these systems needed an input from a ground navigational beacon to update their position. Now, if you didn't fly over a beacon for a while, then you would get what's called INS drift. And so the position as the flight progressed became less and less accurate, which is why usually, and Captain Nick and Captain Jeff can attest to this, usually before you began an oceanic crossing, be it an Atlantic or Pacific crossing, you would usually overfly a navigational beacon to both zero out the INS error and to also make sure that the position that is in the INS coincided with the geographical position of that particular beacon. Now, as after 007 happened, we, the United States, basically made what was then called the GNSS, or Global Navigational Satellite System, available to civilian aircraft, albeit with an error included in it, so that other countries or hostile nations could not use that signal to target us, with military assets. And so nowadays, our aircraft, our systems on board our aircraft use that GPS signal to update their position constantly, which is why we are able to fly with actual navigational performances of 0.05 miles and less during the cruise portion of the flight. Now, as far as polar navigation is concerned, there is, and I'm sure that if you ever pick up a navigational chart, you're going to see these green lines going from north to south with the letters VAR, Victor Alpha Romeo, and a number next to them. And basically that is a line of magnetic VAR. It stands for
variation. Variation.
And variation, exactly right. And basically the variation is the angular difference between your magnetic north and your true north. And we both know, and everybody knows here, that geographic north is not the same as magnetic north. And as you go up in a latitude or down in latitude, that angular difference becomes greater. And so once you get past, and the airplane that I fly, once you get past the 70-degree north latitude, then the system on board is going to automatically change from magnetic reference heading to true reference heading. But this is something that happens automatically. In the 7.5 and 7.6.7, there's actually a button in the instrument panel that you're going to switch from magnetic to true once you get to those latitudes. But the flight plans and the flight management computer is basically going to follow what you have set on your legs page there, on the legs page of the CDU. And as long as you have the system tracking on lateral navigation, and because of the reason that the system is constantly updated by GPS, the flight plan is followed to the T. So that shouldn't be an issue nowadays. So, basically, very simply put, that is how polar navigation and long-range navigation works. And insert the rickets here.
I'm sorry, what? Are we still on?
That was just brilliant, right? That really no, seriously, that was great.
Very good.
But in everyday parlance, we fly up north, and if we head across an ocean, or we end up with a lot of difference between true north and magnetic north, we'll select true north and go back to the old ways of relying on our INSs, because that's what INSs do. When you couldn't rely on your compass anymore, you relied on inertial navigation, and that always references to true north. So basically you did away with compasses, you flew on true north. When you go so far north that you think about it, a globe, if you look at the top of a globe, all those lines of longitude are converging into a tiny little spot. It becomes really hard to actually plot your position. So over the polar region, they drew a straightforward square grid. and you did it via grid navigation, which is specific to the polar region, and makes it a lot simpler because you no longer have all those converging lines that you would normally navigate by. To be fair, I don't actually fly much further north than 72, 73 north, and that would have been on the old Narita route, where we used to go on an oceanic sector that went around some fascinating island where the world's largest nuclear weapon was ever detonated. So not only are you getting bombarded by solar radiation from above, you're receiving nuclear radiation from the remnants of this enormous weapon that was so large that it shook and broke windows in Moscow, and the scientists that let it off actually made it half as big as Stalin wanted because they had no idea what was going to be the effect on the Earth's atmosphere had they let off a weapon that Stalin actually had requested them to do so. Anyway, by the by, that's kind of a bit of a side. Fact is, when you go up that far north, you're relying on the inertials to guide your route. They do a great job. An aeroplane automatically slips into grid navigation when you go that far north and then moves back into true navigation when you go a little further south. And practically, from a pilot's point of view, we don't really do much. We select true navigation when we go over the ocean and we go that far north, and then the aircraft automatically slips into grid navigation as well. But it's a line on a map. The airplane follows it, does it very well. And, you know, thank the Lord we don't have to end up doing star shots and other equally difficult things, reprogramming inertials that only had 9 waypoints. Whoa, that would be interesting.
Yeah, that's what I had to do when I was flying the 141.
The Korean 7-4, I think they're the guys that forgot to program the next set of waypoints in and drifted off in heading mode and got shot down by the Russians.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, nightmare. Anyway, so nowadays it's a walk in the park in comparison with the old days. But Rick is absolutely right, and his level of knowledge I admire. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, both of you, for answering that question from Ed in Massachusetts. And both of you did a fabulous job. And it is now time for us to end the show. There's still lots of feedback to cover, and including feedback from Swedish Jim regarding cerebral palsy and JetBlue starting an ab initio program. We have some other interesting feedback regarding stubbed flights from Steve Perry. We have some great feedback from Mike Dell regarding female pilots in the Navy and other. Oh, just too much to talk about right now. And I just realized now that I forgot in the news section to talk about the cray-cray flight attendant, but maybe we can cover that next time. By the way, Rick and I are planning to be together on Tuesday for episode 198, and hopefully that'll transpire. And we'll cover as much of this feedback as possible, as well as other items in the news that crop up between now and then. And in the meantime, if you want to learn more about the show and the Coffee Fund and all that stuff, head over to airlinepilotguy.com. Anything else we should say before we end the show, guys?
No, nothing on this side. Looking forward to hanging out on Tuesday, recording 198, and it was great once again to be along. And Captain Nick, always a pleasure and an honor to have you on.
Oh, you're so kind, Rick, considering I'm always so rude about you. But thank you very much.
Oh, I forgot to mention the fact.
Seriously, I really appreciate your level of knowledge is stunning. I'm always truly amazed. I wish I could keep pace with you.
We're all in the same boat there with you, Nick.
So we also have some great audio feedback to be played as well. Tales of Daring Do by the one and only.
Oh, that's a nice little old story. Yeah, that would be good.
Very, very amusing, and we'll definitely get to it on the next show. And until next time, as always, wishing you clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week. Woohoo!
Good night, y'all.
Good night, everybody.
Could they?